We are live.
I call the combined committee of the whole to order. Please rise if you're able for reading of the invocation. As we come together, we recognize the great responsibilities laid upon us. Our council will always strive to understand the needs of the people we serve and use power wisely and well. Our purpose is to establish and maintain a city of prosperity and righteousness where freedom prevails and where justice rules. Let us also not forget those who served our community and who are no longer with us so that we can continue to do the work we must in their memory. Thank you. Be seated. Roll call has been taken, Madam Clerk.
Yes, it has.
Are there any declarations of conflict of interest from members of council? Seeing none, I have one, and that's the last item on the agenda because it mentions CN Rail, and my son works for CN Rail, so the mayor will take the chair and facilitate the end of the meeting. Councilor Sullivan.
I also have one too, 8.1.1, not a full conflict. The year 2024, any discussions from that, I'll have to withdraw myself from. But when we move into the latter years, it's no longer affiliated with my company that I work for, so that I can participate in it.
Okay, that's your call. Thank you. At this time, I'll ask members if they would like to separate for discussion purposes. Please note that 8.14 is already separated because we have a delegation. Oh, excuse me, Mr. Mayor. I think you want the floor. Before we move forward, Mr. Mayor, the mayor's going to have the floor.
Well, we're just dealing with separations, right?
Yeah, but did you want to deal with the other matter?
We can deal with that once we do the
Separations. Okay, yeah, separation, Mr. Mayor.
I have quite a few, but I don't want to monopolize first speaking, so I'll take two of them. 8.1.2, which is fireworks regulation, and 8.2.1, which is the HR metrics report.
8.21, yeah, okay.
8.1.2 and 8.2.1.
Yes. Any further separation, Councilor McCurry?
Mr. Chair, thank you. 8.1.3.
Any others? Seeing none? Any other separations? Okay, Council, Mayor Davis.
Yeah, I'll ask for 8.1.6 to be separated.
Okay, anything further, Mr. Mayor?
No, that's it.
All right, thank you. Okay, all right. And now we'll call, now I'd like to call Councilor Scully. Can you please move the motion to approve all items for consideration consent not separated?
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Sullivan, that all items for consideration consent 8.1 to 8.2 not separated for discussion purposes be approved.
Call the vote.
Thank you. All those that are subject to the vote are item 8.1.5, notice of intention to demolish an accessory structure at 70 Alfred Street, and 8.1.7 Brantford Heritage Committee report, and 8.2.2 the minutes.
Thank you. Call the question.
Thank you. Separation of items for consideration carried unanimously on a recorded vote. All those voting in favor are Councilors Van Tilburg, Samwell, Hunt, Carpenter, McCurry, Martin, Sless, Caputo, Sullivan, Sequoia, and Mayor Davis.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. There are no statutory public meetings on this evening's agenda. We do have recognition of achievements. We have one recognition of achievement on the agenda tonight, but before we get to that, the mayor would like to say a few words on another matter. Mr. Mayor, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Chair Carpenter. I'd like to say a few words and have us take a moment of silence to mark the passing of two individuals who died this past week who had served on this council. And as we all know, those that have served in elected office, it's an honor to do it, but it also takes quite a bit out of someone's life. And so when someone has served our city and they're now passed on, I think it's appropriate we recognize them, as we did with Pat Luciani when he passed away last week. So unfortunately, there are two individuals, Enid Green and Ray Simpson, who passed away this past week. And I'd like to say a few words about both of them. And I'd like to thank Councillor Carpenter for providing me the information about Enid Green, who I didn't really know that well, and Mike Tutt in respect to Ray Simpson. So with Enid Green, she served as an alderperson from 1981 to 1982. And she was a dental assistant. She'd worked for many years for Dr. Badke. And she was committed to the community beyond serving in elected office. She was past president of the Business and Professional Women's Club of Brantford. And she volunteered for a number of years at the Woodland Cultural Center and Mohawk Chapel. Ray Simpson had a very unique history. He and I were both elected for the first time in 1985. He served as alderman for Ward 5 for a 3-year period. And interesting to know that he came in second, Pat Luciani came in first, and both of them beat Wally Lucenti, who then ran after that. He and his delightful wife, Faye, were the co-owners of Bertall Cleaners for about 18 years. And Ray was a lifelong advocate for the business community and fiscal conservatism. He began his career at the Royal Bank, and he worked for a time at Cockshut Farms before he became an owner in Bertall Cleaners. Interesting, he did for 25 years with Arnold Anderson, the play-by-play at the Civic Center for hockey. And he was also the founder, along with Ross Paulus, of the Brantford Super Test Warriors, which played lacrosse in the Civic Center and won the Mann Cup in 1972. He also purchased the fire-ravaged THB train station. He rebuilt it in 1989. So he made a very important contribution to Brantford in his life here. And so I'd like us to stand for a minute and a moment of silence to mark their passing and in respect for their service. Thank you. Be seated.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now we have, I'd like to ask Doug Hunt to come forward to the podium with Mayor Davis. He's going to make a presentation.
Might just say that we do, for very special people and for very special accomplishments, do a recognition. Normally we do it at council, but we recently changed our procedural rules so we can also do it at committee of the whole. And so tonight it's my great pleasure to have with me Doug the Great, and to recognize Doug Hunt's incredible achievement, where he, as we all know, set the Guinness World Record for a second time by taking 14 steps atop 55-foot tall stilts. And this is not the first time he's brought that record to Brantford, but we were all very proud, those of us who were on the team, to have a small part in Doug, you achieving this world record. I was actually able to count the steps, and they were very small, but that every small step counted. But when you're 55 feet up in the air, everything counts. And I have to say, Doug, I mean, you made Brantford very proud once again to have a world record holder living in our community. And it was no mean achievement. For those of us who were there, Saturday, October the 22nd was extremely windy. And I thought, Doug, any sane person would have called it off. But no, Doug insisted on proceeding in the riskiest and most adverse of conditions. And despite all of that, he did set a record, and great that you did it on the weekend that we were celebrating the 10th anniversary of the Wayne Gretzky Sports Center. So very appropriate that we also set another sport world record the same weekend. And you know, your vision started long before that day. I know you met with counselors and staff to share your vision. You worked very closely with staff. You worked with the community, and through a lot of in-kind donations and sponsorships, you raised over $18,000 for participation support services, which, Doug, you devote so many hours to good causes in the community and always generally to raise charitable funds. So, but it was great for that weekend to see not only were you raising money, but setting a record for yourself and for our community. And I want to thank you all then that you do for the community and the joy that you bring to Brantford. And I think it must be said, though, you don't set a world record like this by yourself. You had a great team working with you, led by Dave Levac, volunteers from Cube, England, USA, and across Canada, city staff, and as I said, even myself had a small role as a step counter. But we all rallied behind you with being inspired by you as you were successful in meeting the challenge. And I must say, you had a very strong mindset to fall forward and always learn from failure as a tool to success. And this is clear in all of your constant achievements, Doug, as you've moved through life and everything you've done. You always remain very positive. You set goals that, frankly, I don't think many other people your age would set such a goal. And that's an inspiration to me, believe me. And so I want to congratulate you on behalf of the city, behalf of council and the mayor's office for your outstanding achievement in setting the world record for a second time. Let's hear it for Doug. And now, standing ovation. And now to top it all off, you're going to get a mayor's certificate. Again, a priceless endorsement of what you've done. So once again, thanks very much, Doug, for everything you do and for providing us with that moment of encouragement, inspiration, October 22nd. Where is it? Yeah.
Here, my friend,
Come on, Joshua, you're a big part of the team.
you know how to use that, Josh?
Here.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, councilors. First off, it was a team. I didn't do it alone. I couldn't have done it alone. And I want to thank Dave Levac here, our team leader, really brought things together and was a big support to the whole thing and bringing all the different things we had to do behind the scenes. I want to thank Bob Phillips, who gave me that extra extension to the stilts that we needed to break the record. It was in support of participation housing. We've always done that. So I just want to recognize that whenever you do something crazy, it is crazy unless you're helping others, and then it's inspirational. So I do a lot of talks of high school students, and I tell them if we hadn't got the record, we'd still be working on it. And if you don't do something like that, make sure you're helping others. The more you help others, the more you help yourself. And look at what's happened today for me. I also want to thank the city of Brantford and the Wayne Gretzky Sports Center. They were a great support. They were amazing. And the other thing I say, to do amazing things, surround yourself with amazing people. So on behalf of Dave Levac and our team, the world record stilt team, used to be the world record attempt stilt team. Now it's officially, and we took it back from the United States. They got enough going on there anyways. And we're a step above, and we're going to keep it in Brantford. And so on behalf of our team, Dave Levac, thank you all. And thank you especially to you, Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Doug. Over to you, Councillor Carpenter.
Is there any member of council wish to say anything? See, it's a little unusual, but okay. Thank you, Doug, very much. And I know the Pates Farm was involved as well. Thank you. Thank you for the great work that you do and how you represent this community with so much integrity. For this, thank you very much. Okay, we'll have one registered delegate for tonight's meeting. Prior to hear the delegation, I'd like to remind those in the meeting today that the following rules of decorum are set forth in the city's procedural bylaw. They all apply. No person shall display any sign, banner, or placard in the meeting other than materials that, in the opinion of this chair, are legitimate audiovisual aids necessary in connection with any presentation to be made to council. All persons present shall use polite and respectful language and shall refrain from use of any language or making of any gesture that is disrespectful or offensive in any way. All persons addressing council shall speak only to the subject matter of debate and shall not speak to any other subject. No person shall applaud participants in debate or engage in conversation or behavior that may disrupt the proceedings of the meeting. I'll now call Payam and Prasad to come forward. Please give your name and address before you speak. You have 10 minutes inclusive of questions. Just come forward and press the button and that'll light up red and the mic will be on. You're- You may go ahead. Is your mic on? Just press the button. And it'll light up red, and then you can introduce yourself. There you go.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today. I would like to discuss 25 William and its profound impact on the community. The issue before us today, it's not just about demolishing a building, but it's about the future we envision for the community. I kindly request your attention and collaboration as we explore the crucial impact of the 25 William. I'm gonna skip some of the points so we have time for question as well. We purchased a property in August 2022 with private financing. Our original plan was to lease the property and refinance with the bank rate and then convert the existing building to multifamily rental. We have great experience. We just finished a similar project in Hamilton and all the tenants are moved in since December 1st. The original plan of leasing, it was listed on MLS since April 22, even before we purchased the property, when it was firmed up, and stayed on the market for 240 days. Absolutely no interest. It was commercial units were being offered in the town for $0 net rent, only to cover some expenses. Market was and is oversaturated for commercial properties. Regarding the conversion part, we collaborated with many local architect and planners and different concepts, and the feasibility study indicated that the maximum of 6 individual units is only feasible on this property, on this existing building, which is not feasible. So there were some building constraints for conversion, the layouts and the real estate market didn't really help the process either. We face many challenges. Mostly I'm going to focus on the operational challenges that the list of our expenses is listed on the next page. Our cost is about $15,000 per month. So every month passes, every year, it add close to $170,000 to our base cost. We purchased it about 1.2 million. We're already at 1.45, close to 1.5 million costs at the property, and which is not sustainable. We've made many efforts to tackle these challenges. We had one of the best marketing and real estate team, practically initiated nationwide marketing. We collaborated with local shelters, nonprofit organizations, explored potential partnership with the educational institution, consulted with MPP offices, provincial housing and ministry. And also I want to highlight this, that we engaged with town officials, Mr. Hodgins, Ms. Musan, Mr. Pedro, and Councillor McRae. They all went through the property. We met, either us or our representative met them. We had detailed discussion on the property. We had proposed for administration purposes, for museum, transitional housing. We came up with some very creative solutions as a direct sale at cost, trade with another town-owned property, partial payment in development charges or tax credit for other owned properties. Unfortunately, none of them got anywhere, and we didn't receive any feedback, any positive feedback from the town. Our current proposal, we went through prospecting and due diligence. We determined that redeveloping the property to a much needed housing unit is the best course of action, purpose-built rental. And with our extensive experience, we own over 200 units from Ottawa to London, Ontario. We own and manage them, so we know we're well equipped for these type of things. Another main highlight is that extensive meetings were held with neighbors and neighborhood associations, and they shared it with their members. It yielded overwhelming positive feedback on our proposal, and I believe some of them sent some emails or a letter to the councils as well. The main key points from those meetings were that they preferred the 4 to 5 story building, not an 8-story building in that location. They supported diverse housing type, reluctant towards shelters and transition house, and a strong desire to incorporate the existing building design into the new structure. We own another property, another heritage listed property in town, 40 Richmond. We are excited to present our program, which we're gonna designate that property. We are excited to present our proposal for a small museum-like room at 40 Richmond to highlight Victoria's school rich history. Extending that idea to 25 William, we plan a parallel approach. We use existing elements like existing fireplaces, colored windows, any element that we can reuse, like a wooden plank within the lobby of the new building to seamlessly integrate its history into the new building. Alternatively, in 40 Richmond Museum, we suggest a dedicated section for 25 William history. Our dual option approach seeks to create a comprehensive museum experience honoring both Victoria School history and preserving the history of 25 William. The current proposal, we've had numerous design possibility for this property. The one that we're currently working on is about 30 to 40 units, multipurpose rental, and 4 to 5 story building. Currently, the property is generating about $14,000 for the property as a property tax for the town, and it's costing $170,000 a year for the owner. Moving forward with this project, the potential is to significantly contribute to the economic prosperity of the community and the town of Brantford. Anticipated development municipal charge fee exceeding $1 million. Moreover, the property's estimated value of close to $30 million when completed will bring hundreds of thousands of dollars annually as a property tax in excess of $400,000. That's my presentation. Any question, anything we would like to?
Thank you.
We're more than happy to answer.
We do have time for question. I have 5 people lined up in the speakers list. Councillor Celeste, you're first, then Councillor McCurry. And Councillor Caputo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And welcome, gentlemen. We've had several Zoom meetings
Yes.
and I think we've gotten to know one another. And I think you explained, you're not opposed to designating buildings. You're doing that in our city right now.
40 Richmond, and we've
That's
done it in East Colimbury in other cities as well.
That's right. So it's not a case of someone that wants to come in and just rip things down for the
No.
sake of ripping things down.
No.
You've shared your vision for this property with the ward councilors, Councillor Caputo and myself, and it was very, the renderings are very nice. And you're incorporating a lot of the existing features from the current building into the new building, which I think you touched on in
Yes,
you're proposing rental units, which there's a huge need in our city, in fact, in our country, for purpose-built rental units, and we appreciate that. The
Question-
current building's
question,
in very
please.
bad shape.
Question.
The neighbors are complaining, as I understand it, that
Yes.
the alarms are going off all night long. Homeless folks are going into sleep,
just a
they're
couple
starting
months ago,
fires.
$60,000 generator was, it was damaged. 3 a.m, neighbor called the police. There are numerous police report, and the neighbors are fed up.
Well, I'll just close by saying the neighborhood association and the neighbors in general are supportive of your proposal, as are the 2 ward councilors, and I won't be supporting the designation. I'll be supporting the demolition.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Celeste.
Thank you.
Councillor McCurry, questions?
Yes, I know the rules, Mr. Chair. Thanks for coming, guys. Can you explain why you cannot incorporate the existing structure into your new development? It's structurally sound, is it not?
No, incorporating this building only can give 6 units.
No, you're not. I'm sorry, I haven't made
Incorporating
myself
into the
clear.
new building,
Yes,
that
why can
would
you not?
cost, it won't be anything affordable. It's gonna cost a huge amount of money to keep part of the building because it's a over 100-year-old building. Doing the sprinkler system, we had a couple of engineers going through the building. The cost is so much, it's just not feasible. If it's possible, we've done it in many locations. That's our main option. It took this long. We tried every possible option, talked to 2 different architects that they're Lane Tech in Hamilton. That's their specialty, integrating heritage buildings. It just didn't work.
So you're losing 15,000 a month on this
A
building?
month, yes.
And that's the motivator, right?
It just can't go on like this anymore. We can't. We were paying $1,300 per month just for security cameras, live security cameras. We just had to cancel it because we can't continue with $15,000 cost per month.
So when you say you're going to incorporate features of the current fine architecturally outstanding structure that has heritage and historic value and has some degree of importance to people in this community, what you mean is you're going to tear out the fireplaces and the stained glass windows if you can get them out intact and shoehorn them into the new building in some sort of fake heritage?
We will. What I don't want to undertake is something which I might not be able to do, but we will do our best. Even some of the bricks and everything, we would like to incorporate as much as possible. We were gonna store them in our 40 Richmond property and use them as much as possible. I need to point out something, even for the conversion to 60 unit, most of the interior elements would have been gone. For the fireproofing, separation between the units, sprinkler system. So the interior would have been completely gutted out. So those elements would have been gone. Now we're gonna incorporate them anyways in the new building and having the same roof slope. So we're gonna have the similar concept, but with 34 units. At the same time, we gotta consider the affordability as well. We don't wanna have.
Do you have a proposal before the planning committee yet?
We have it ready. We haven't submitted yet just because, again, because of the expenses that I mentioned, the minute we touch it, it's $70,000
Thank you.
planner.
Thank you, but we're out of time. We went over by well over a minute. So thank you, and my apologies to Caputo, Council Sullivan, and Council Coley. We ran out of time here. Thank you. We'll be dealing with this one first on the agenda, as we usually do when there's a delegation. So it'll be shortly. Thank you. The debate.
Privilege, could I put a motion forward to extend the time? I would like to hear more of what they have to say in the questions. Councilors have to
You
ask.
can, yeah, it's always acceptable.
Then I'd like to have
Second by
time
Councilor Secoli
extended
for-
and basically until council is done asking the questions. I found this very informative.
Would you accept 10 minutes then? Okay, 10 minutes. We'll extend for 10 minutes. Councilor McCreary, you want to finish?
Thank you.
Chair, I was just,
Yeah, we got to call the vote.
yeah,
And then
it's moved and seconded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. The motion to extend the time carried on a recorded vote of 9-2. All those councillors voting in favor are Councillors Van Tilburg, Samwell, Hunt, Carpenter, Martin, Sless, Caputo, Secoli, and Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Councillors Sullivan and McCreary.
Councilor McCreary, you had the floor when I called the 10-minute timeout. Do you have any more questions?
I have not.
Okay, then I'm going to move on to the speaking order. I had Councilor Caputo, you're next, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here this evening. Nice to be able to see you in person and not through a video screen.
Same here.
Couple of questions. You've done full due diligence in the neighborhood. You've spoken to residents, everything about your proposal, everything that you're willing to do.
Yes, we talked to a couple of immediate neighbors, and also our team had a meeting with the neighborhood association, which they shared all the information with their members.
And they're all on board with everything
They're
that
all
wants to happen.
supportive. We haven't heard
Okay.
any opposition on this plan.
Now, if I'm correct, your current property taxes you pay to the city is about $14,000
Yes.
a year.
14,800.
So that's going to be an astronomical increase when this project is
It's a
done.
one-time development fee of in excess of $1 million and an annual property tax of in excess of $400,000.
Perfect. And you've exhausted every opportunity to find something for this property, everything through the city, through
We've done
different.
everything we could in the past 1.5 years.
How fast are you willing to start this project?
We
If
get the
ten-
permit tomorrow, we start the week after. That's how fast we can promise. Within a month, we're gonna submit all the planning, everything to the planning department. How fast they can move it, we're not asking for anything extra. It's gonna be a simple, nice building as we discussed. And as soon as we get it, this is not a big project, so we can move very fast, and that's what the city needs. Brantford has one of the lowest vacancy rates in lower than Toronto, lower than Hamilton. It's under 1.7%. So this is the time to do purpose-built rental.
And how will this interfere with the other project happening at 40 Richmond? Will
It
they all
doesn't, they're
coincide?
completely separate. I want to point out something. We're not the sole ownership of both properties. So we're like a joint venture with a group of investors that we are. So they're complete two separate things. It's not either or. So both are moving forward as planned fast.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Caputo. Councilor Sullivan, and then Councilor Segoli.
Thank you, Chair. You stated that you had offered commercial businesses zero rent and only cover off the expenses. And that this property was on the market for 240 days. How long was that offer of zero rent and only covering the expenses actually on the market?
I believe after the first couple months, that was obvious that nobody even inquired about the property. So we had no intention. There was one group that approached. They wanted to do conversion as well. We told them we've done our due diligence. After a couple of months, they came to the same conclusion that it's just not feasible, and they left. So we had absolutely no interest, somebody even walking through the property to see if they like it or not.
Did you take into consideration that we're still recovering from COVID and a lot of places aren't up to moving out into other establishments and that maybe it just needed more time?
I think with 240 days right now, it's not COVID. A lot of places have picked up, but our problem is we cannot sustain moving forward like this. $15,000 a month is just not sustainable. Neighbors are upset with us. Nothing's working with us to keep this. And even we rent it today, there is no second plan for it. So the property sitting there like this, be the vacant, it just deteriorate the building as well. It's not even good for the building.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Councilor Sullivan. Councilor Segoli, you have the floor.
Great, thank you. Hi, guys. Thanks for
Hi.
coming out.
No problem.
Remind me when the property was listed for sale and lease?
It was listed for lease. Actually 4 months before we purchased the property. It was firmed up with the Red Cross. So it was April of 2022. It was listed for lease and
22?
22.
Okay.
And May of 23, it's been listed for sale. So over 240 days, it's been listed for sale, more than that for lease.
So safe to say the real estate market has recuperated from COVID. At that time, it was
Yeah.
quite aggressive. And if we were going to make a sale or have any interest, it would have been definitely during that time.
We offered it at cost to the town, and we were very creative that we don't want cash if we don't have it. We can trade it for development charges. It should be partial payment, partial. Give us another town-owned land. We purpose-built on that. Just trade it for the cost value.
Can you walk me through the condition of this building? What
The
is the
condition-
condition of it?
Yeah, we've had numerous break-ins. So we had individual breaking to set a fire to warm up. So the police had to come. They broke a pipe to take a shower in the basement. So the structure is over 10-year-old. So the structure is not the best structure. That's one of the challenges of incorporating it into a new development. We've had it. It's extremely expensive to keep couple of the walls and then build beside it, which takes the whole purpose of affordability. So the condition is getting worse and worse just because nobody's in there. It's not just because we don't take care of it. We've been taking care of it. That's what the 15,000 comes, but it's not the best condition.
Yeah, so it's not in pristine condition.
No,
It's never been maintained really to
No.
the level of perfect. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you, Councilor Segoli. Any further questions? Seeing none. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
We will be dealing with this very shortly. The committee will now consider items that were separated for discussion purposes. Councilor Martin, please read the motion to place all separate items for consideration consent, not privileged vote on the floor, please.
Thank you. I move second by Councillor McCurry that all items for consideration and consent, 8.1 and 8.2, separated for discussion purposes, be approved.
Thank you, Councilor Martin. So we'll start with item 8.1.4 because there was a delegation here. And Councilor McCurry, you asked for separation, so you have the floor first.
I'm 8.3, Mr. Chair.
Oh, Councilor Caputo, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a no-brainer. We currently, as a city, are generating $14,000 a year in tax. We have an opportunity for a seven-figure income. We have a chance to be able to bring to a neighborhood a great, viable proposition. We meet the needs of housing. We certainly address Brantford Station to help spruce it up. We have neighborhood responses that certainly are all in favor. And I am shocked that we actually got to this point. I certainly respect everything from the Heritage Committee, but I still stand by my previous stance every time we talk about this. If the owners of the property are not willing to do this, I find it very difficult for someone to be able to tell them that they can't. There are a lot of residents in the city that people want their heritage for their properties, and this isn't one of them. So why are we here to say yes or no? So I'm voting in favor of the demolition, and I look forward to this project moving forward.
Thank you, Councilor Caputo. Councilor Segoli, you were next.
Yes, thank you. I did read the report and I think we're stretching a little bit in looking for some heritage-like component to designate this. I'm fundamentally opposed to designating anything heritage against the owner's wishes. So I will not be supporting designating 25 William Street as a heritage property. And I do believe we would need an amendment to just issue a demolition permit. So I'm going to let everybody talk. And then I think later on, I will offer an amendment to strike out B and C and to suggest that we offer a demolition permit here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Segoli. Further speakers? Councilor Sless and then Councilor McCurry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's pretty apparent by the delegation's presentation that they have tried and they've exhausted all avenues of trying to make this property work in its current state. And it's just, it's not feasible. And it's also not feasible to be pumping about $15,000 a month into something that you can do nothing with in its current state. They wouldn't stay in business very long if that's what they made a habit of doing. They would be out of business and they certainly wouldn't be getting anywhere. So to me, I won't use the word no-brainer, but it seems very apparent that this is the proper course of action. It's never nice. And I drove by that building coming tonight to council. And it is a nice looking building. What I can't see as I drive by it is the smoke damage from the fires that have been lit in there to try and stay warm, people breaking in, setting off alarms, waking up the neighborhood, police, fire trucks, everything pulling in all the time. It's become a nuisance property in that neighborhood. It's very disruptive. And those folks are encouraging these folks to take it down and put something presentable and nice in it. And that's exactly what they're doing. And in doing that, the numbers have been thrown around here that there's about $400,000 in annual property taxes will be generated out of this property that's now sitting there derelict. 40 people that are looking for a rental unit to live in will then have a place that they can apply to and get a home and possibly get off the street. I don't know if this is going to go to that level, but it just makes, in my opinion, a lot of sense to remove a building that's derelict and in the way and causing a lot of problems in the neighborhood and put something that the neighborhood is asking for in its place. So I'll be supporting to not designate, but to issue a demolition permit.
Thank you, Councilor Sless. Councilor McCurry, you have the floor, sir.
Chair, thank you. Let's hope no one files a code of conduct complaint about someone calling this a no-brainer. We can't afford the $7,000 again. Let me say this. I find that we see this from time to time where we personify buildings as being evil and personify them as being things that they're really not. And it started on Colburn Street, and some of you may remember that. We had 41 heritage buildings that went to the landfill. And out of those 41 buildings, there were 3 or 4, a handful that really were beyond help. The rest were all salvageable. But we told the tale at that time that they were awful, terrible buildings, and the world would be better if they were in the landfill. And some of that space that was vacated is still empty. And then I think back to another item that was before us, perhaps in the last 12 months, where we had an application come before us And like this one, there was no planning application before us at the time. And this council decided not to act on that demolition permit. And since then, that project has not proceeded. The buildings are still there, and there's an opportunity that they may at some point in time be reused. I've been in this building most recently in the last couple of months. I've been in it a number of times since I've been back in Brantford. And I can tell you that in my opinion, although I'm not a structural engineer, I do have eyeballs, and what it looks to me like is a good solid building with a lot of heritage character, not only outside but inside. And I think the characterization that we've heard tonight about the fact that it's, you know, painted as being a blight on the landscape and not reusable, I don't find merit in that. And I guess that's a difference of opinion between the current owner and those of us who value heritage. And you know, I find it, I can appreciate why these folks want to take profit out of the property. I can appreciate that. It's a bit surprising, the shallowness of the pockets that would not allow the carrying costs of this project until it comes to fruition. And I really do think that there's an opportunity that the old building can be incorporated in a new development. And I would say maybe take a trip to London and take a look at Delta Armories to see what happens when you blend old and new. So I will be supporting the intent to demonstrate, the intent to designate this property tonight. What I say is that it buys time. I don't buy the argument that the building is derelict. It buys time, and you know, perhaps the owner will have second thoughts if this is, if we give the intent to designate tonight, perhaps second thoughts about how they develop the property, perhaps second thoughts about severing that property off and selling it so somebody else can renovate that building. And as the owner said, you know, you can create 4 to 6 suites in there. And I've got to think that those are pretty darn nice living spaces. So I would encourage everybody tonight to support the designation process. There's an opportunity that we can revisit this later, notably when the planning app lands on our desks on a Thursday morning. Come back and revisit it then. But for tonight, let's just put this on hold and accept the staff report. Staff have done a good job here, and I would remind this committee that it's been a long time since staff has taken the bold step of telling us that we should be designating the building because it's of such importance to this community, maybe not so important to folks from outside the community who want to turn a profit.
Thank you, Councilor McCurry. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do not agree with designating anything against the wishes of the owner. So I'll be supporting Councilor Coley's resolution to issue the demolition permit. And I know there are other councilors that feel that way. It's been suggested that we've attributed evil to this building. Well, we can't really call it an angel either. I mean, it's been broken into, there's been fires inside. And that's a serious hazard. You know, as a firefighter, somebody said one time, well, it's an empty building, we don't have to search. But the fire started somehow. But somebody that broke into that building that's not supposed to be there that started the fire. And that's still a life that we have to try and save. So by leaving it empty, and obviously the owners have tried boarding it up and put up security cameras, but that doesn't deter the kind of people that are breaking into these buildings, unfortunately. And they go in and they make a mess and they do damage, and it reduces the structural viability of the building to the point where it can't be salvaged. And it sounds like they've tried a lot of different things to make something work there with no avail. So I fully agree with giving them the right to demolish their own property to make room for what sounds like is going to be a very nice building that's going to add value to the area. And the neighbors are all buying in. When's the last time you heard of a 4 or 5 story building going up where the neighborhood said, yeah, this is a good idea? Usually it's going to be increased traffic, it's going to block the sun from my property, any kind of excuse. But here the neighborhood is supporting this. So that's all the more reason to give them the permit to demolish and let them move on with this project.
Thank you, Councilor Martin. Any further question, speaker to this item? Councilor Van Tilburg, thank you.
Just, I've looked through the rundown of the activities that are happening in the building. And I think it needs to be clear that you can go to the north end of town into new commercial buildings and the exact same thing is happening and they're occupied, they're vacant, they're not vacant. The same kind of things are being stolen, ripped out, the same activities. It's not an empty building, and that's actually causing this. It's a culture that takes advantage wherever they can, and an empty building that's more opportunistic. I think it's not lost on me that prior, when the Red Cross was there, we didn't have these kind of activities happening while they're there. It's happened in the vacancy of the building. I am torn on this because you look at that building and you see it for exactly for what it is. I actually often don't believe developers when they say they've tried everything. Usually they just go and they slur a property and say things that may not be true just to get their way. I have this feeling they actually mean their words. A community of residents nearby that are with the program. I mean, we have to answer to who our dance partners are in the community. And if residents are saying this can possibly be the solution, that's a good thing. I have other properties where the residents say, no, we need this building here. This is our fabric. To me personally, that building feels like a part of the fabric, to me personally. I'm not the ward counselor. I wasn't at the meetings. I haven't done a walkthrough through the building. I would love to have had that opportunity. I really don't know how I'm going to vote on this, but I do know that I don't feel like I've been snow jobbed. Sometimes I do. So I can see it being a tough situation if you've got this investment and you can't get anybody to take buy into the property to do anything with it other than knocking it down. I just think if your reasons are because you have these issues, that's a reason to knock it down. In a way, it's not enough because you can have that happen we have that happening regardless. It's going to be interesting when it comes time to vote. I may go with the recommendation for Heritage at this time and let my mind come to grips with what's happening in the next week when it comes back to us before council. Because I love that building. I think that building is absolutely gorgeous. But I got to think about what is it doing with the neighborhood nearby?
Thank you, Councilman Tilbrook. Any other first-time speakers before I go to second-time speakers? Seeing none. Councilor Sokoli, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Carpenter. Okay, so we have owners here that have demonstrated to us that they have exhausted every effort to preserve this building. They've reached out to community stakeholders. Nobody wants to touch it. Heck, even the city of Brantford didn't want to touch it. Okay, so they've really shown us that they've tried. The neighborhood is asking for it. And like Councillor Martin said, when does that happen? So at this point, I'm going to bring forward an amendment that strikes out clauses B and C and replaces it with that council deny the intention to designate 25 William Street as heritage, and that a demolition of the structure of 25 William Street be permitted. And that's seconded by Councillor Caputo.
Point of order, Chair. I believe that's contrary to our ordinary procedures. I suggest that if the council member wishes to introduce something, that first what's on the floor be defeated in whole or in part.
We've had resolutions for substitutions, so I'm going to allow the resolution to substitution.
yeah, a
Moving
strike
the
and a
resolution to
place.
strike out and substitute something different. Substitution is allowed under.
Thank you.
rules. Thank you, Councilor McCurry. So it's on the floor, Councilor Sokoli. Would you like to speak to it?
I think I've said everything. Thank you.
Is your seconder wish to speak to it?
Maybe I'll choose my words a little wiser this time around. Yeah, I'm supporting this. Again, it's not every day that you have a neighborhood that's coming to the table saying that they're in favor of this. There's a lot happening in Brantford Station over the next little while. And to not have this as a part of it, I'd be very disappointed. I think they've done and exhausted every single avenue they possibly could, and it's time for something to happen in that area and for some change. So I hope everyone else feels the same.
Any other speakers to the amendment? Yeah, we'll see what the amendment will come up on the screen shortly. There you are, there, it's on the. Okay. Council Mayor Davis to the amendment.
Yeah, and I'll probably take two speaking opportunities on this one. First, I've got a question for staff. Can you explain to us with a notice of intention to designate? Does that actually designate the property?
Through the chair, Patrick Fuser, Intermediate Planner, Long Range Planning. So through your chair to the mayor, notice of intention to designate doesn't fully designate the property. It starts at a 120-day period.
Right, so in the 120-day period, you then have to, as a council, decide to designate, make a final decision to designate, and if you don't, by the end of the 120-day period, then the demolition permit can issue.
Through the chair, that is correct.
All right, and so in this 120-day period, if we decide to go with a notice of intent, staff will provide us with a fuller, more robust report.
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay. All right, with the time I've got, generally I've been pretty clear in the past that philosophically I'm opposed to a situation where you're telling a property owner that their property is to be designated. I call that the stick. I far prefer in order to protect some of the wonderful heritage we have in our community, use what I call the carrot. In fact, we've done that in this council. We now have a grant program that provides a benefit of sorts for those who agree to have their property designated. It allows for a grant program. We'll pay 50% of the costs of doing renovations and repairs that relate to the heritage feature of your property. And that's intended to reflect the fact that we value heritage, and our philosophical approach is doing it by helping rather than through using a stick and saying you are going to do something. Because my experience has been, if you designate a property against an owner's consent, generally what happens is the property falls into further disrepair and then either falls down or burns down. It really doesn't work unless you've got a motivated owner. So I would never support the designation of a property against the owner's consent. However, I will admit that since we've moved into this building and I've become involved in the maintenance of this building, in particular the clock tower, I've really come to appreciate the value of heritage, and I've developed a bit of a passion for it. And so I'm going to vote against this amendment, and I'm going to vote in, assuming it fails. If it does, then I'll vote in favor of the notice of intent, not because I will agree to see the property, that I would vote eventually for the property designated, which I won't, but I want there to be time, 120 days, to see if with the public exposure this meeting will have, whether there'll be someone in the community that will want to step forward and take on the project of saving this really beautiful, historically significant building. If it doesn't happen, if someone doesn't come forward who's a willing owner or a willing partner in seeing the property be developed as it is with the current architectural format, then I'd almost probably certainly vote not to designate. So I'm going to vote for time, 120 days. It's not an inordinate period of time or delay, to see if there are elements in this community who value and have a passion for heritage. They might be able to come forward to save this property. And perhaps they haven't been aware of this. And I think probably after tonight and with the exposure we'll have, there'll be more people aware of it, and it may happen. And I'd like to set the stage for that to happen, and hopefully it will. But if it doesn't, I certainly don't want to force these property owners to do something they don't want to do.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Sless, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 3 months doesn't sound like a long time to pause, but look what happens in that 3 months. The cost of the project goes up by $45,000. The neighborhood has 3 more months of dealing with all the imposition on their daily lives, and not getting what they had asked for. And it's going to be a minimum of a 3-month delay in getting 40 rental units onto the market that are desperately, desperately needed in this community. So while 3 months doesn't sound like a lot of time, if you're standing waiting for an apartment to come open, that's a long time. I wouldn't want to live on the street for 3 months hoping that this building gets built, that I can get off the street and into a proper place to live. So I understand why the folks that are touting heritage are touting heritage. It is a good looking building, and I'll be the first one to admit, when I drive by, that's a really neat looking building. But does it serve a purpose? No. You can't do anything with it. The best you can do, from what I heard this evening, is with a ton of money, make 6 units out of it as it exists. And we're talking about an awful lot of money to create 6 units, or you can build 40 units at a much cheaper cost and get cheaper rent out into the marketplace where people can afford to actually live there. So while I understand and I'm sympathetic to those that want to delay for 90 days or 120 days, I guess it is, to see if somebody comes forward or if something miraculously happens that saves this building. But what we have before us today is the opportunity to move forward now, start building new units, getting people off the street, getting them into apartments, and cleaning up a mess in a neighborhood that the neighborhood is screaming to please clean up. And we have an opportunity to do that. Someone else will do it for us. And it baffles me that we would say, no, leave the mess there, leave the inconvenience there, keep disrupting their lives. And we want to think about things for another 3 months. When you're living beside it, 3 months again is a very, very long time to tolerate what's going on there. So from that perspective, I really struggle to see why somebody would want to hold this up. And really what you're holding up is the inevitable. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Sless. Councillor Martin, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to staff, how much staff time would be involved over that 120 days?
Sorry, through the chair, to the councillor, it's a bit too early to predict. We would be having the help of the Heritage Committee members. We have started seeing some research come in from them already after this was brought to them in December. But I can't give you an accurate hour estimate at this time.
Just a guess.
For an equivalent through the chair, the private sector, the charges are between $5,000 and $10,000 if you were paying an external consultant. But
Okay.
that might include retention for any appeals.
Okay. So anybody who supports delaying this for 120 days, if you don't intend to support designating it anyway, you're wasting staff time, $5,000 to $10,000. You're wasting $60,000 of the developer's money because it's costing them $15,000 a month.
Councillor Martin, you're impugning members of council. Just speak to if delay would be a waste, don't mention a member of council.
Okay, I didn't realize what I said there, sorry. But it's, if you're gonna vote to demolish it anyway in 120 days, why delay it? Let's just go forward with it now. Give them what they want, give the neighborhood what they want. Make this whole thing move forward and everybody wins. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Any other first-time speakers? Councillor McCurry on the amendment.
The amendment gives direction to demolish a heritage building, I believe. And I will draw committee's attention to a previously derelict building which was problematic and belonged in the landfill and you know, was a scourge on the neighborhood. And that's Park Baptist Church, which is beside the Carnegie Library, which is now the Laurier Building. And there was considerable debate on that back in the day when I was on the Heritage Committee. And it was probably the worst thing one could ever imagine, the condition of that building. It was terrible. It was awful. But you know what? It was structurally sound. There wasn't a mark on the inside of it. And it was before the days that we'd been inhabited in this city by folks who don't have the best interests of the community at heart and who steal things and wreck things. And they even climb up onto the roofs of buildings on Fairview Drive and steal stuff off those. So as was mentioned earlier by Councillor Van Tilburg, this ain't specific to this building. So I just want to draw the parallel there, folks, because, you know, what one person sees as landfill material, another person sees as something that they can have a vision for and they can move forward with. And that's exactly what we've got at 25 William Street, is a project that can come to fruition with the right owner. If these folks aren't the right owner, perhaps someone will come forward in the next period of time. Perhaps even the city of Brantford may have another look at what our opportunities are in terms of you know, looking forward to some of our housing needs. So I would hope that folks would listen to what the mayor has said. Coming from a committee member who's not in favor of designations, but one who's logical, sensible, and on the right side of this issue, I believe. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor McCurry. Any other first-time speakers before I go to second-time speakers on the amendment? Councilor Van Tilburg.
If this amendment was voted down and a report was to come back to council, would there be more information regarding the discussions that the city had? We've got a kind of a brief here, but I don't have all the details on what that discussion was and what the potentials were. Would that be included? Or could it be included?
Brian Hutchings, City CEO, through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, they could, that could be included. They weren't extensive. We did a walk through the building, and they could be included in the report.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Van Tilburg. Any other first-time speakers? Seeing none, second-time speakers, Councilor Caputo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Basically want to reiterate what Councilor Sluss said. We're in the same camp when it comes to this. It's $60,000, not $45,000. Every opportunity has been exercised, and it's been on the market for over a year and a half, and there hasn't been a taker. Yet we think in another 120 days, something's going to happen, and we're going to assign staff to come with another report. So we're going to be into it for more money. When we have an opportunity now with a builder who's willing to start ASAP, and we're going to sit here and delay that process because we want to play with someone else's money. I don't see that. What message are we sending to anyone in the city, from a contractor, developer, or even a resident who wants to do something to their building and it gets held up here because the owner themselves do not want this building to be declared heritage? So I'm going to speak now before Councilor McCurry says that I'm going to be liable for another $7,000. It's going to come out of your account, by the way.
Thank you. And we don't name other members of council. Thank you. Councilor Sokola, you have the floor.
Councillor Caputo and I are somewhat aligned tonight in our thoughts. I was just going to remind this committee that this property spent almost 2 years on the free market in a great real estate market. And if anybody in the community had a dire need to step up and bring this back to life, it likely would have happened at that time. So I really don't see any need to delay this by 120 days. I think we should make a decision here today. And I would like everyone here to support allowing these individuals the opportunity to demolish this property. I'm going to be supporting the ward councillors who want this to be demolished and who want to see this area rejuvenated. I'm going to be supporting the neighborhood and all of the neighbors who want to see this property brought back to life. And I just don't see any need to delay this, and I don't see any need to waste staff resources on waiting 120 more days to inevitably issue a demolition permit. So I'm asking for everyone's support. Support the amendment tonight, guys.
Thank you, Councilor Coley. Councilor Sluss, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's been suggested that these folks don't have the best interest of the city at heart. And I would take great exception with that. They're pouring hundreds of thousands of dollars into a building a couple blocks away from this building to bring it back to life. They're putting condos in. It's their coin. And it would have been a lot easier to tear that down and put up a tower and make a lot more money if that's what they were intending to do. But their heart is in the right place. They're not here trying to pillage and tear things down to create money and create wealth. They're here, and I think they are for the betterment of the neighborhood. And as the ward councillor, and I'm sure Councillor Caputo could back me on this, they've gone out of their way to talk to the community to make sure that they're on track and what they're thinking aligns with what the neighborhood is thinking. They've gone to great lengths to do that. They've offered free space for the neighborhood association to take part their meetings and that in the building that they're renovating at 40 Richmond. So to try and paint the developer as somebody coming in to pilfer the community and take out what they can and have no regard for the history of this community is just totally false, because they've gone beyond in the building that was savable, and they're saving it, and they're doing it in spades. It's going to be a beautiful building when that's done. Again, they've shared the renderings with the ward councillors. So I would hope people would just take a clear view at this. There's nothing underhanded going on here. There's nothing that people are trying to pull a fast one, or they're trying to portray something that isn't. What they're portraying is what it is. They're just being factual, and the building is just not up to what needs to be up to be able to convert it into something that is worthwhile to have. The outside might look nice, but it's not creating anything on the inside. And we heard this evening, by the time you put in today's standards inside that building, you're talking units that will probably rent for far more than you and I could afford to pay. So to put 40 affordable units in, to me, makes just a whole lot of sense in the period of time that we're dealing with as a city and trying to get people into housing. This is an opportunity to do that. And maybe it's us that aren't sincere. If we're not accepting this, moving forward and building 40 units to get, again, people housed, perhaps we're not all that serious about creating housing for our residents. So this is an opportunity. Let's take it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Sless. Any other second-time speakers to the amendment? Seeing none, I'm going to call the question on the amendment.
Thank you. So the amendment to item 8.1.4 carried on a recorded vote of 7-4. All those councillors voting in favor are Councillors Van Tilburg, Hunt, Carpenter, Martin, Sless, Caputo, Secoli. Those opposed, Councillor Samwell, McCreary, Sullivan, and Mayor Davis.
Thank you. The amended motion is on the floor for second-time speaking opportunities. Councillor McCreary, yep, you have an opportunity.
Chair, thank you. I have a further amendment.
Let me see if there's any second time. Well, go ahead, but no, that'll eliminate their opportunities. Go ahead with your amendment.
The amendment would read that the above be deferred until receipt of planning application documents from the proponent.
You have a seconder? Councillor Sullivan, seconder?
And I'll speak to it, Mr. Chair.
I don't believe a deferral is debatable.
You are sharp tonight.
So we're gonna call the question on deferral. Time and place. Deferred till,
Deferral until the corporation of the city of Brantford is in receipt of an application for the development.
Okay.
I believe it would be a rezone.
an application will do fine. Thank you. Okay. Deferrals on the floor. We're gonna call the question. So that
Sorry, can I have that up on
it's
the
gonna be on
screen?
the screen. She's working on it now. Look for a point of order. Otherwise,
Maybe.
it's a deferral.
The point of order is, would it be procedurally correct for the mover to withdraw till we had a bit of discussion about it and then floor it again?
He says no, it's on the floor.
Okay.
We have it in front of you. We will call the vote.
Any clarification? Is it that the permit will be deferred or that this decision will be deferred?
the whole resolution as amended be deferred until such time as the application.
Okay.
That's what I understand. Thank you. And we'll call the question.
Thank you. The amendment carried on a recorded vote of 6-5. All those voting in favor are as follows. Councilors Samwell, Van Tilburg, Hunt, McCreary, Sullivan, and Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Councilors Sless, Secoli, Caputo, Martin, and Carpenter.
The motion is deferred. Thank you. Moving on to other items on the list is 8.11, because Councillor Sullivan had a conflict of interest. It's on the floor. Does anybody wish to speak to 8.1.1? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you call a vote on this?
Thank you. Item 8.1.1 carried on a recorded vote of 9-0. All those voting in favor are Councilors Samwell, Carpenter, Martin, Caputo, Secoli, Van Tilburg, Hunt, McCreary, and Mayor Davis, noting Councilor Sless was out of the room and Councilor Sullivan had a conflict.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, doing a fine job tonight. 8.1.2 is now on the floor, and I believe it's Councilor or Mayor Davis. You want to speak to this item. You have the floor, sir.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair Carpenter. So this is in respect to amending the fireworks bylaw to include Diwali and the Lunar New Year. You know, we often talk about how we aspire to be a diverse, welcoming, and inclusive community. And that's an important message. Many of us give it, but it means nothing unless you're prepared to back that up with action, either through policies, programs, or actions. And this is an opportunity for us to demonstrate a commitment to being an inclusive, welcoming community. Now, Diwali to the Hindu community, it's the festival of light. It symbolizes the spiritual victory of light over darkness, of good over evil. And fireworks have been an inherent and critical component of those celebrations. It's part of the long tradition of Hindu Diwali celebrations, because the fireworks, it's a festival of light. Obviously, that's an explosion of light, but it represents light overcoming darkness. And it also traditionally in Hindu communities has been used to ward off evil spirits symbolically, because Diwali's about good overcoming evil. So it's an important element to the Hindu Diwali community. I know that from having been involved in some of the Diwali festivals. It's integral to their celebration and their customs and their culture. And we have a very growing, fast-growing Hindu community. And so if we want them to feel truly welcome and inclusive, we have to, as many other communities in Ontario have done, allow this. And there's another good practical reason for it, and that is many Hindus will set off fireworks. It's such a critical part of their culture. But, you know, they're doing it in an environment where there's been no communication from the city about the rules that apply to fireworks, as there is before Victoria Day and Canada Day. And because Diwali is not allowed, city comms can't do that communication before Diwali. You know, telling those who are going to be setting off fireworks that, you know, the days you can do it, that you can't do it after 11 a.m., that you have to be over 18, it's got to be on your property and not a city property or parking lot. And so if we include this in the fireworks bylaw, city comms can do their usual great job in communicating and educating the appropriate way to use fireworks. And so I think it's an important symbolic and meaningful message to our growing Hindu community that we do accept everyone in our community, that and we accept and are welcoming and inclusive of all of their celebrations and customs, which in many ways are similar to what we do for Victoria Day and Canada Day. Right. So I'm hoping that we can support this unanimously to send the right message. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council Martin, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the fire department representatives here. Have there been any fires started by improper use of fireworks that you know of?
Through the chair, Fire Chief Todd Binkley, there have been no fires started from fireworks in the past year.
Okay, thank you. With that, then I'll support what's on the floor. I think this is a very good thing to do for various groups within our community, and I think we have to support that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council Martin. I have in the queue Sakoli, Van Tilburg and McCreary. Council Sakoli, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Carpenter. There are going to be so many people in Ward 1 who are very happy to see this, and it is very symbolic of the city of Brantford opening our arms and welcoming all communities and bringing us together. I definitely could see a difference. I do live in Ward 1 and I saw an explosion of fireworks, pun fully intended, that the numbers have really gone up and there's a lot more people doing them on Diwali. So Chief Binkley, I do have a question. More inquiring minds want to know, we're not allowed to do fireworks in city parks and things like that. And they're supposed to be done on city property, but I get this, or sorry, on personal property, but I get this question a lot where people feel like they're safer doing them out in a park. Can you help explain why we're prohibited from doing fireworks, other than obviously we're gonna have some cleanup, but could you help explain that to the residents of Brantford?
Through the chair, Dwayne Armstrong, Deputy Fire Chief. Setting off fireworks on municipally owned property, it would be allowed provided permission was granted by the Parks Committee or Parks Department. Historically, looking at it, there were some issues with gathering the necessary insurance to provide that. But there is the possibility for it.
Okay, so if anybody wanted to host Diwali fireworks or Victoria Day fireworks in a park, they could reach out to the city of Brantford and get a permit to do so?
Through the chair, that would be the first stop, would be to request that through them.
That's perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Council Sakoli. Council Van Tilburg, you have the floor, sir.
Is there a fine for lighting off fireworks outside of the parameters that we currently have?
Through the chair, through the fees and charges bylaw, there is a fine for setting off fire. We do a fee for response.
Did we give out any fines over Diwali in the last 2, 3, 4 years?
Through the chair, the fees and charges requires a second visit to a property for setting off fireworks. Typically, the first visit is one for education, and we have never seen a second call.
Right. I don't know other people that set off fireworks and they do get that second call out of the time frames that are allowed. Or I don't know if they get the second call, but they certainly get the warning letter. And if you do it again, and I believe it's $500.
Through the chair, it's set to the MTO rate, which is just above $500.
Yeah, so you can tell I've had that conversation with a resident on a rural property that sits in the ward. Hey, I love fireworks. Give me Chinese New Year, give me Diwali, give me anything for fireworks. But the problem I have is that most of the residents now often complain about fireworks. And I get to that point where I personally love fireworks. I'm one like, I really don't care. But the calls of the people that do care and the reasons that they have problems with the fireworks, it's real to them. And I get to that point where should the city be allowing fireworks, private property on the days that we are doing? I get to that because at one point in time, we're going to have to do an all or nothing, right? We're either going to have to allow everybody to have fireworks for their celebrations, or we're gonna have to say, no, we not, and we'll have to do it through the city. So if I was an individual and I wanted to have, I was having a wedding or whatever, wanted to do fireworks, can I get a permit for that?
Through the chair, if you could get a permit for that if you met all the other provisions in the bylaw.
Okay, so there's a possibility if people wanted to do fireworks outside of the parameters that we have, that they could do it with a permit.
Through the chair, that is correct.
And then they could also do it on city property with a permit following those procedures as well.
Through the chair, you would have to have the permission of the owner. In that case, would have to be the city.
Excellent. I appreciate all this information. I don't know how I'm gonna vote on this because because where do you draw the line? I have no problem having an endless line. Like I said, bring me Chinese New Year, bring me the other things. So I don't know how we move progressively forward. I think we're gonna hear from the public whether or not they agree with us. But the truth is that those fireworks are going off. Tickets aren't happening. The fireworks are gonna go off. So why should we have a problem with it? That's just kind of my personal feelings.
Thank you, Councilman Tilburg. Councilman McCurry, you have the floor, sir.
Chair, thank you very much. I'm okay to support this as well. We have a cohort of people in this community that want to light fireworks on occasions that are special to them, and I'm fine with that. Having said that, I'd be equally okay if the resolution said ban them all, not have fireworks at all. I seldom hear from people that want more days of fireworks, but I sure do hear from people who want fewer and want tighter restrictions. And I think if instead of 11 counselors at the table, if we had 7 Wheaton Terriers and 4 Labrador Retrievers, I'm pretty sure that there'd be a different resolution before us, because it's something I hear a lot from people who own dogs. Our old dog was really quite concerned with fireworks. Our new guy is sort of impervious to everything. But, you know, there are concerns about fireworks in general, and some people just have to act like idiots. And it causes us to have to reconsider things like this all the time. And, you know, we're constantly required to fix what idiots do in this community. And it's a shame that that often drives us. But having said that, I hope that staff have a means to ensure that they communicate with the folks in the Hindu community, to have a good chat with them about the do's and don'ts of this, and make sure that we get off on the right foot. And it might also be, perhaps the mayor could reach out, and perhaps someone, a representative of that group, could come see us at council night and speak to this for us, and ensure that we're off on the right foot.
Thank you, Councilman McCurry. Councilor Sullivan, and then Councilor Sless.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Further, maybe this is a question to staff. If we were to go through with this, how would we go about communicating this? Because when Diwali was going on, I did see a lot of probably considered unsafe ways of lighting off fireworks on residential streets, too close to properties, too close to houses, trees. And obviously there needs to be some serious education going out there on what safe firework lighting is and what it's all about.
Through the chair, the fire department and corporate communications do an aggressive education campaign around fireworks at Canada Day in Victoria. We would do a similar one during Diwali and Lunar New Year if it was passed by council, as well as we put signs in parks to allow people to let people know as they're walking through the park that they can't let fireworks off in the city parks or on school property.
Okay, no, my bigger concern is like people's driveways and not having them shooting straight into the air and actually shooting towards other people's houses because they don't know how to properly prop a firework up. That's more of my bigger concern.
Thank you, Councilor Sullivan. Councilor Sless, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the fire folks. I keep seeing reference to consumer fireworks. Is there an industrial type or a commercial type of fireworks?
Through the chair, there's a display level fireworks that's available for purchase only by people that are certified and licensed for their use. So they'd have to be.
And those wouldn't
especially
be the
qualified.
things that you would see for sale at, say, Walmart?
Through the chair, no, they would not.
Okay. And this is just referring to the consumer one, correct?
Through the chair, yes.
Okay. maybe I missed it, but are the hours, like we're talking about the days that you can do this, are the hours defined somewhere as well that I didn't see?
Through the chair, it's in the existing chapter for the bylaw. So it states that pardon me, it would only be available up until 11 PM without the exemption given from council.
Okay, so at 11 o'clock fireworks stops, is that,
Through the chair, that's what would be permissible as the bylaw is written now, yes.
okay? And these consumer fireworks can only be lit on private property? On property you own or property that you have permission to be on, as far as not city property or not school board property, but private property that you either own or have permission to be on? Is that?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Sless. Councillor Caputo, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also am going to be supporting this. I think that the demographics of our city has changed dramatically. And I think that anytime various groups want to celebrate, I think we should give them that opportunity to do so. I do, though, throw caution out that we need to either monitor or police it so that the 11 o'clock curfew stays accordingly, and that the good thing is we probably don't have to go to a football game to watch fireworks go off every day to see a team get put onto the field. I think it's an opportunity for us to be able to show the citizens of the city that we're listening to them and we're allowing them to have their celebration. So fully supported.
Thank you, Councillor Caputo. Any other first-time speakers? Okay, going to second-time speakers, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I was a kid, I remember going to Princess Anne Park every year for Victoria Day. They had a carnival during the day to raise funds to buy fireworks for the next year, and they had a wonderful fireworks display that night. I think one of the things that we should do with this is encourage the Hindu Association or whichever group is wanting to set off fireworks. And instead of a bunch of people buying retail fireworks, if they all donated their money to one group, they could get permission to use a park. They could have a festival during the day to raise money for the next year. They could have a proper fireworks display that would be far better than what you can buy at Walmart. And it would be one event instead of 3 or 4 nights of terrifying all the dogs in the neighborhood. It'd just be the one night for fireworks. And I think everybody would enjoy it so much more, because you can incorporate a festival during the day and then follow it up with fireworks at night. So I hope the groups that are interested in expanding this will take that into consideration and perhaps try to set up something to encourage a more professional display that's far better, that everybody will enjoy more, not just the people that are celebrating Diwali, but all the other people in the neighborhood that enjoy fireworks can go out and watch and hopefully contribute to the fundraising that pays for the fireworks for the next year. So I think that's the better way to go. And I'd like to see that for Victoria Day, for Canada Day. And hopefully we can see more professional firework displays and fewer retail ones that, quite frankly, are much smaller and don't have the same punch. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Any other speakers? Just gonna add a comment to it then, if I may. I can't help but think Canada Day was a wonderful celebration, or sorry, New Year's Eve was a wonderful celebration where we had lots of fireworks in Harmony Square. Very good show. Went well past 11 o'clock, but I'm sure a permit was requested for that. The question, a lot of organizations, especially in the country Japan, are using light shows that are very much like fireworks and that doesn't have a carbon footprint. So there's options coming. The world is changing. Seeing no more speakers, I'm going to call a question on this.
Thank you. That item carried on a recorded vote at 10-0. All those, sorry, it carried unanimously. Sorry, Sless is back in the room now. All those voting in favor are Councillors Sullivan, Sless, McCreary, Hunt, Van Tilburg, Samwell, Carpenter, Martin, Caputo, Secolia, Mayor Davis.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And now we're moving on to 8.1.3. Councilman McCurry, you asked for the separation. You have the floor, sir.
Oh, I did. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I can see the esteemed Mr. Weidrich is making his way to the podium. And so I'd like to thank staff for this report. Councilor Martin, I think we brought this resolution some time ago to council and it was unanimously supported. And it came about because we hear a lot from folks who are quite annoyed at the sight of beggars, you know, hitting them up for money at intersections and Tim Hortons drive-throughs. And it's quite unsettling, especially for, you know, some female folks who are quite threatened by the presence of folks that are, in some cases, a bit aggressive. So, Mr. Weidrich, can you explain to us how you plan to spend $25,000 of our hard-earned money and what the education campaign will involve?
So through the chair, I'm Aaron Wallace. I'm Director of Community Strategies and Family Supports. I'll also note for committee that our Director of Communications is online as well. So the communications will essentially go in three directions. So two of those directions will be to members of the public. One message will be about what's already prohibited in terms of panhandling. So we know that panhandling is currently prohibited under the Safe Streets Act in a number of areas, particularly if you're a captive audience, like, you know, using an ATM or coming out of your car. We need the public to be aware of those restrictions, that if they experience that or witness that, they are entitled to call the police and have that remedied. The other piece of information for the public would be around the opportunity to donate or volunteer to organizations that support those folks. So with the understanding that some of those folks are panhandling as a means of survival for basic needs, food or other necessities, there are community organizations that do that. And perhaps the public, if they choose to, may wish to give the money to the organization who can then distribute those goods or basic needs. There'll also be a piece of information going in direction of the individuals who are engaged in panhandling. So that would be information about the resources that are available to them and potentially also about the restrictions if they were to violate that. So in terms of the spending of the $25,000 and how those messages go out, I think I'll, with the chair's permission, defer that to our Director of Communication, who might be able to give you a better accounting of that.
Perhaps I will just resume my line of thought. Thank you. Your explanation was quite sufficient, Aaron. So when you say you're going to be providing education, are you going to be providing education at the 403 ramp, for instance, at the median at the corner of Colburn and Brant Avenue? Or are we going to put it in newspapers that these folks don't read?
So through the chair, I think it is about engaging with the individual rather than putting it through a form of media, especially for those engaged in panhandling. This would have to be limited to city property, where our bylaw officers are permitted to go. Would defer to Mr. Weidrich if he has additional information on that, but no, it would not be on Ministry of Transportation property or anything outside of the city's property.
And I do recall seeing in other communities, and my memory fails me, somewhere in the United States, signage that they post on community property by the sides of roads, directing people not to give money to panhandlers. Is that under consideration for us?
Through the chair, we did look at that option. We couldn't find an example that appeared to be very effective in either discouraging the giver from giving or the panhandler from asking. So it is not a recommendation in this report to invest in that signage.
Okay. Are you going to have some further investigation with respect to that? Because I think, you know, it's a permanent way of reminding folks not to give, but to give rather in a responsible manner to places like, you know, the United Way or the food bank. So I'd really appreciate it if we could continue to investigate maybe a good example somewhere. Now you mentioned that some of these folks are. Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Would you like me to put you back on for a second speaking opportunity? Okay, you can decide later. Councilor Martin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got a call from a constituent one time and she was talking to one of these panhandlers. And she was quite upset because there was no room in any of the shelters. And at the time I was on the board of directors for the Rosewood House. And at the time there was about 4 or 5 or 6 beds open pretty much every night. And so I explained to her, well, what this person told you wasn't true, that they were just telling you a story to get your sympathy and get some money from you. And she seemed quite surprised that they would have lied to her. But that's the problem with people begging on the side of the road, is you don't know if they're truly homeless or if they're just begging to support a drug habit or an alcohol problem. And so if people give to the food bank or Salvation Army, it's going to people who are truly homeless, who need help, instead of someone who's just trying to support a bad habit. So I hope we can encourage people to not give to the people on the side of the road who are endangering themselves by being close to traffic and endangering other cars because they might cause an accident at some point by stepping across the road or going between cars. And if they give instead to Nova Vita, Salvation Army, Food Bank, they can be more assured that it's going where it's needed instead of where it's not needed. So I hope that people will take to heart the message that you need to give to a responsible organization. It's the same as when you go to a national park and they tell you not to feed the bears. They don't want the bears to become dependent on humans. Well, we don't want drug addicts and alcoholics to be dependent on begging on the side of the road. And so the only way to stop them from begging is to stop giving them money. If they're not making any money standing there, they're not going to stand there. So we need people to stop giving money to the people's side of the road and give to responsible organizations. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And through you to staff. Aaron, I just wanted to clarify we cannot enforce this on MTO property. And I'm specifically talking about the exit at Gretzky. So the ramp belongs to MTO. Am I correct? So I see Dave nodding. And so that would mean that this bylaw is not going to stop. And I'll tell you, I came home from the airport at 4 o'clock in the morning a couple of weeks ago, and there was somebody there. And I thought, I don't know how brisk business can be at 4 a.m., but there was still somebody there. So this is not going to stop those particular locations. Am I correct?
Through the chair, Dave Weidrich, Director of Bylaw. That is partially correct. If we receive permission from the MTO, then we would be able to go there. Same as some of the grocery stores on Fairview Drive, King George Road. They're private property, so we can't enforce our bylaw on private. But if they allow us to be agents and do that, we can educate people as they're leaving the malls.
So follow-up question to that would be whose responsibility or responsibility and or opportunity is it to make that request either to MTO? And I certainly do appreciate the fact that private land owners or mall owners or whatever can request our assistance.
Through the chair, that's correct. It would be almost what we do with the encampments right now on private property. We reach out and ask if they would like our assistance. And that would be my department.
Great news. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Councillor McCurry, did you have your hand up? No. Councillor Sless. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify again, Dave, we are going to reach out to MTO and the grocery stores, the private property folks, and ask if they want our help, or are we going to wait till they ask for our help?
Through the chair, if this is passed and we start doing the promotion, yes, I would ask if they want assistance.
Terrific.
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Councillor Sless. Anyone else? Oh, Councillor Van Tilburg. Thank you.
You know, you sit beside me on the regular.
I know there's a big screen here and I understand when here Davis can't see us down there.
No worries. Now I'm not going to personally take it bad when the mayor does it. There are very good professional panhandlers that show up in our city. They do a good job of getting money, getting there, getting what they need and getting out. And then there's the open time, I guess I call it the less productive time or what have you. And we get probably more locals trying to jump on the same gig. And the thing is that they may not be as experienced, and there's some erratic behavior, both from drivers and those asking for money, particularly particularly of concern is at Wayne Gretzky and Colburn Street on that median. And I've seen, because I live near there, I see a lot of precarious moments. And I've never heard of anything happening, but I've literally seen things like, wow, that could have turned out bad. So what is the information that we're getting to the drivers of the cars? Because, I mean, you'll see a person and they'll have their hand out, they're wanting to do something good, they're handing the money out, the light changes, and they literally start driving away while they're still engaged with the transaction. So what are we telling the drivers that are coming to the traffic lights and they're changing?
Through the chair, our research took us through the United States and all of Canada, and one of the big things was exactly what was said before, where our money can go, where their money can go better, as opposed to giving $20 to a person on the corner. Give it to the Why Not mission for meals, give it to the food bank. There's so many, and that's what we want to tell people, is their money can go further.
Yes, and that's, I mean, we have that transactions that happen on sidewalks. There's the intrusive things that are happening at the ATMs. But my concern is the safety. There's a safety element happening that is different from just donate to a better service. One day we're going to be looking at an incident where somebody might be just a little more off balance that's standing on that median, or somebody who's maybe gets spooked. And I don't want to see something happen. And so I just want to know, what is our communication and along the lines of safety to reduce that? Like, or even is there a fine for somebody that puts someone else in danger? Like and I'm speaking of the driver.
Through the chair, so our bylaws do prohibit people from soliciting on the median. However, the bylaw does not give authority to actually stop that person or remove that person. And so what our team has been finding, the outreach team, they've been trying to speak with these people who are panhandling on the medians. Brantford Police have done a great job. They've issued many tickets under the Safe Streets Act. So when the outreach workers and bylaw workers pull up to talk to these people, they leave. But again, they come back.
What? But I'm not blaming the person that's asking for money. I'm looking at the person that's giving the money. Do you follow me? The driver of the car is handing money out. That's creating there's two people involved in a transaction.
But
are they doing anything wrong by doing this drive-by while they're still moving and handing money?
Okay, that's time. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
If you could, if hopefully get a chance, I'll give a second chance to try and follow up.
Mayor Davis, you have the floor, sir.
Yeah, I'm going to take two opportunities. First opportunity is going to be asking a lot of questions, and through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Dave Weidrich. So, Mr. Weidrich, we have various, the most effective legislation that's on the books is the Safe Streets Act. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes.
And the Safe Streets Act, it prohibits really aggressive panhandling, like approaching a car, a moving car. But if someone stands on the side of the road and they don't get aggressive, is that covered by the Safe Streets Act?
No, sir.
Right. Okay. And under the Safe Streets Act, that was designed, came forth in the Mike Harris government, and it was, I think, designed to deal with what were called the squeegee kids. Is that right?
Through the chair, yes.
Yeah, right. They'd come and they'd squeegee your windows. So who can enforce the Safe Streets Act?
Through the chair. Only the police can enforce.
Right. And the Safe Streets Act includes the power of arrest.
Through the chair, yes, for obstruction and not stopping, yes.
Right. And how effective have you found a system of fining? So for example, under our bylaws, we can fine for certain activities, but how effective is a system of fines in dealing with these kinds of situations?
Through the chair, the fines are not being paid. We know that. These people don't have the money to pay the fines.
Right.
However, it is still an act to get them to stop.
Right. And is there any consequence to not paying a fine?
Through the chair, now I believe it's just a suspension of their driver's license if they had a driver's license.
Right.
So there's no warranted committals anymore.
Right. And so when someone doesn't have any assets, fines are really kind of meaningless unless they also drive.
Through the chair, correct. However, the issuing of the ticket allows the officers to tell them to leave.
Right. And that's the procedure and policy that you've been following.
Through the chair, yes.
Right. Is it possible to have a bylaw that prohibits someone from making a donation from a vehicle?
Through the chair, yes. However, bylaw does not have the authority to stop those cars, so that would have to come back to the police as well.
Right. Has there been any community in Canada that's tried that? I know there's some that have talked about maybe doing it, but has any community actually done that?
Through the chair, we were unable to find any community that has successfully implemented a bylaw like this. The only ones that we found were dropped prior to being implemented.
Right. And Mr. Weidrich, in preparation for this report, did you have your bylaw enforcement staff try and collect some information as to who is doing what on the street?
Through the chair, yes, as I stated before, outreach and bylaw, so our encampment team actually tried to work with these people, even identify them, because none of them were any of the 93 people we've helped in encampment since July. And so they wanted to know who they were, why they were there, and what was their source of income, and why were they panhandling at that corner. And again, every time they pulled up or stopped the car and walked across the street, they left, and we had no authority to stop them.
All right. And so this would be the same people, I mean, our great bylaw enforcement team, encampment support team. And they visited well over 100 encampments in our community since July 1st.
Through the chair, correct, 163 encampments.
Right. And it's the purpose there is to primarily to assist them and try and get them into housing or other services.
Through the chair, correct.
And we've been quite successful doing that.
Through the chair, very successful.
Okay. So the people that the bylaw have seen on the street panhandling, have they seen that it's the same people that they're seeing in encampments?
Through the chair, not one.
Right. So what's your conclusion from that?
Through the chair, my conclusion is these are not the people that we help in homeless encampments.
So unlikely they're homeless.
Without more evidence, it would lean that way, yes.
Okay. I think I probably hit 4 minutes, but I would like a speaking opportunity. I took the first 4 to ask questions.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Davis. Any other speakers? Mayor Davis, you can have your second opportunity right now.
Yeah, so we heard from Mr. Weidrich that the difficulties we have under the current system of laws, and people can't go to jail for unpaid fines, and if someone doesn't have any assets or a driver's license, fines don't mean a lot. They're not much of a consequence. So I think this approach, which is education, is the critical way of doing this, because I mean, the people that donate, I understand why people donate it. You get a good feeling when you donate. You think you're helping. But I think the reality is that there's a lot of anecdotal information, evidence that this might be a bit organized, might be shifts. I mean, some of us have seen activities that led us to think that that might be happening, a possibility of it happening. And I mean, there's clearly no doubt that some of the money that you give to someone on the side of the road is going to be used to purchase likely drugs. And so when you're donating money to a panhandler, there is a possibility that what you're doing is helping to fuel the drug trade. And there's a much more effective way if you want to be really helpful to the homeless. There are many organizations in our community. There's churches like St. Andrew's Church. There's the Brant Food Bank. There's a Why Not Youth Center. There's a whole list of them. There's Rosewood. There's the Salvation Army. There's St. Leonard's. There's lots of ways that you can donate and have a really meaningful, important, beneficial impact for those in our community who are most in need. And I'd certainly encourage people in our community that you not donate to people on the side of the road. It's a bit of a safety hazard for one thing. And you're encouraging unsafe behavior, people standing the side of a road with moving traffic. And there's just way better ways to help those who need help in our community than doing this. And I certainly support staff in doing this public education program to help people understand that we all like to help. You feel good when you're making a donation and you're giving money to someone who you believe is not doing as well in life as you are. But there's the really good ways to do it where the money has an impact. And there's other ways where you just don't know what's happening with the money and you can assume certain things are possibly going to happen that will not lead to a beneficial impact. So I'm very happy to support this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor McCurry, second time.
Chair, thank you very much. And through you to staff, does your team, Mr. Weidrich, have the resources to visit the frequent corners on a daily basis?
Through the chair, yes, we spoke about that as a team, how we would incorporate that with our encampment enforcement, yes.
What would you think about having your folks stand before the beggars on the medians and hand out public information notices?
Through the chair, that may have been discussed already, yes.
Yes. So that's part of the plan, right?
Through
Or
the
don't you
chair.
want to say?
We haven't come up to a final, what we're going to do yet.
Okay,
So it's
yeah.
one of the ideas we had, yes.
Yes, yes. And there are some other innovative ideas, correct? Yes,
Through the chair, yes.
but you don't want to tip your hand in case they're watching tonight.
Through the chair, correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McCurry. Any other speakers? I just would like to say it's been mentioned. Oh, Councilor Martin? That's all right. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. As part of my training, we saw a video one time of a traffic stop where a woman was pulled over. And when she got out of her car, she set her purse on her trunk to get out her driver's license and ID. And the police officer immediately motioned for her to come out from between the cars. And no sooner had she got out from between the cars, but the police car was rear-ended and pushed into her car. If the police officer hadn't moved her, she'd have been very seriously injured. We have that same situation when panhandlers are crossing between cars to get to the other lane where somebody wants to give them some money. Hopefully we don't have any accidents like that in the city, but when people are watching things happen that shouldn't be happening, sometimes they get distracted from what they should be doing, is driving the vehicle, and accidents happen. So this creates a hazard for the panhandlers as well as for everybody else on the road. And you don't want somebody swerving to miss something like that and going up on a sidewalk and hitting a child. So I think it's very important that we move forward with this. And if our staff are going to be on medians handing out flyers, they need to be well-trained and understand the dangers that are associated with being close to traffic like that. And I hope that they get proper training if that's the avenue that they go down. But it's something that sooner or later, there's going to be an accident where somebody gets seriously hurt, and it's going to be very unfortunate.
Thank you, Councilor Martin. And just quickly speaking to it, staff had did mention, and Councilor Martin and others have mentioned about giving to charities. The mayor's mentioned it. And if you want to give to charities, Salvation Army, the local churches that are providing food for those that are hungry, or certainly the food bank. But if you're going to donate to charities, I'd ask that you think about doing it this way, that you make a monthly donation, automatically comes out of your bank account. I do that with the food bank, just so that you forget about it, it just comes out on a regular basis. And actually money is what the food bank needs the most, because then they can buy what they need and they can make that, they can multiply that twice that, I suppose you give them, going and buying groceries for them. The money you would spend on groceries, giving them that as a financial donation, they can make it work a lot farther. Thank you. I'll call the question.
Thank you. Item 8.1.3 carried unanimously on a recorded vote of 11-0. All those voting in favor are Councilors Van Tilburg, Samuel, Carpenter, Hunt, McCrary, Martin, Caputo, Sless, Sullivan, Sequoia, and Mayor Davis.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And now we're moving on to 8.1.6. Mayor Davis, this was the, you have the floor, sir.
Which one? This is the Heritage Conservation Districts?
Yes, the Heritage Committee report.
Okay. Yeah, and so I'm quite happy to support this, and you may wonder why, when I've previously said that philosophically I'm opposed to designations, but this is a different approach. And I was involved when I was on council in the 80s when we designated Brant Ave. And the end result of that has been, yes, it's an inconvenience for some of the property owners on Brant Ave. They're doing renovations, et cetera. They've got to file an application to the Heritage Committee and it has to be approved. And many of the applications are approved because they are generally maintain the historical features of the property. But the end result has been the preservation of a historically significant street in our community, maintaining the same streetscape and the same architectural look, which I think probably most of the owners on the street agree that's a benefit to them and their property values. And in fact, that's why when we did the original designation of that district in the 80s, it had to have the consent of a majority of the owners. And we got it because they came to understand the value of that. I know we've tried in the Dufferin area neighborhood to do this in the past and it hasn't worked. I think because it's probably too large and too diverse. But you know, there's some interesting communities on this list. And in particular, I'm thinking of the Waterloo neighborhood and the Dominion Industries neighborhood down in Homedale. And those are very small, really distinct and really unique communities that have a commonality in their history and the architecture. And I'm sure many of the people who bought those homes have done that for that very reason, the atmosphere of those neighborhoods and the architectural features in it. And so I'm pretty optimistic that what may come out of this is some heritage districts done because the majority of the property owners in that neighborhood want it. And I think they'll want it because it'll preserve the unique character of those neighborhoods that I'm sure was a major factor in their deciding to purchase property in those neighborhoods. So very happy to support this. I think it's a worthwhile endeavor. And because it doesn't result in anything being done against the majority consent of a neighborhood. And I think it may result in a beneficial impact for some neighborhoods, similar to what we've seen on Brant Ave in the last 2 decades. So happy to support it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Martin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A question through you to staff. There's 2 areas in here, Victory Housing Neighborhood and the Riverview Drive neighborhood. And there's no existing designated properties within either one. And there's no priority group A properties, no priority group B properties. They don't seem to be areas that have particular heritage interest. Why are they in this report?
Through the chair to the councillor, those neighborhoods were identified by our consultant, Archaeological Services, Inc. in the prior project. While none of the properties were individually recommended for listing, that was because they were late in terms of their built date, and we used our inventory prior non-statutory database for what we evaluated. But when they looked at the city, these were 2 areas that had a very strong, very distinct neighborhood character, and they could meet that threshold for being a district.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Martin. Councilor McCurry, you have the floor.
Chair, thank you. Could you tell us currently how many heritage districts we have and where they are?
Through the chair, there are 2 in the city. One is Brant Avenue and the second is Victoria Park Square.
And did you have a look at the history of attempts prior, namely, as the mayor referenced, the attempt to do the same thing for the Dufferin Avenue neighborhood?
Through the chair, those records were pulled. We know both times the studies were done, and it was the neighborhood consultation when the decision was being made to proceed to that final step, and that's when the project stopped. So that's why we detailed it explicitly in the report that we had looked at those before.
And I think we've learned a thing or two, and we've grown in terms of how we communicate with folks about involving people and helping make those decisions, right?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Yeah. So next steps, provided this is approved tonight, would be to do more work or to consult with the neighborhoods. What would you be doing, Patrick?
So through the chair to the councillor, the next steps are going to be reaching out to the neighborhoods. We'll have a project webpage to explain the project. We'll do a mail out. And then we would have neighborhood meetings with each neighborhood to discuss the particulars of that neighborhood and why it met the criteria. So with Dominion, we'd have a bit of information about the history of the Dominion Steel Company and that neighborhood being built. With Waterloo Court, we talk about that neighborhood's history instead and give them that sense of
Yeah.
background.
Yeah, the Waterloo Court story is interesting. The Dominion Steel neighborhood, could you describe that for us? Street names?
So through this chair, I don't have the full list memorized, but there's a neighborhood core where it's a very, very distinct sort of almost English cottage or Tudor style brick and stucco dwellings, a lot of mirrored buildings or similar designs on that core. I think it's Lincolnshire Street, but the entire neighborhood boundaries we've shown in our mapping, that was all envisioned to be one cohesive neighborhood.
And one of the features is the way the street curves, right?
Correct.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you, Councilor McCurry. Councilor Van Tilburg.
Okay, I was looking through it and looking through the appendix and the Victory Housing neighborhood is not being recommended or is being left aside. What's the deal there?
So through the chair to the councillor, the plan can be to come back to that neighborhood. It's not part of a first phase. One of the comments we heard at the committee was there were a large number of neighborhoods, 6. There'll be a lot of consultation to do in 1 year. So the decision was made to focus on the ones where listed properties existed.
So it's not being eliminated.
Correct.
It's more or less saying, we will get to you. Because I will definitely need to have an answer for that. I think I would get it coming or going, whether, what are you doing to us or what aren't you doing to us? But one thing we have to do is say what we're doing. So it is on the list. It's just not going to be on the priority list of the first ones. And so we may be getting to that in the following year or the year after. Is that my
Correct.
understanding?
Correct.
All right, I'm supporting this. Awesome.
Thank you, Councilor Van Tilburg. Councilor Hunt. You have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you. And through you to staff. So when a neighborhood is designated as a heritage designation, walk me through the process if somebody wants to modify their building. Is there additional steps that are then required because they're in that designated area?
So through the chair to the councillor, when a heritage district is established, changes to the exterior of the property can be subject to a heritage permit, but you can also specify works that do not require a permit. Interiors are not regulated in a district at all. But so this could allow for works like maintenance, if you are doing brick repairs, wood repair, general maintenance work would not need a permit. But you can then specify work such as building an addition or demolishing the structure would need that heritage permit first before the building permit. We do these permits routinely at the Heritage Committee today, that we do not charge a fee for the review. They're usually handled within a month.
Okay, so I'm wondering if the Accessibility Advisory Committee can be somewhat consulted. And the reason that I'm looking specifically at the commercial downtown neighborhood is that in my line of work, we run into a lot of problems when people want to, they have a business and it's in an older building, and their desire to make it accessible so that they can open up their business to 22% of the population that has a disability. We run up against challenges just with the mere fact that it's an older building. My concern is that then we're also layering another layer of bureaucracy on there, that not only do they want to make potentially some accessibility modifications, which are going to be done to the exterior of the building, that now there's that extra step that they're going to have to go through. So I'm wondering if there's a way in the I don't want to see something that has to come back to council, but I'm wondering if there's a way in the process that we could either work in the fact that if it's an accessibility modification to the exterior of the building, perhaps that goes to the Accessibility Advisory Committee, as well as Heritage, so that there's not an added layer of bureaucracy that is going to impede or make someone decide that they do not want to enhance the accessibility of that building.
Through the chair, that is something that we can do if we get to the stage of actually establishing a district with a study. We can have those conversations and look for ways to, for example, if you have a commercial building and the ground floor is altered and not original, then that could be something that just does not require a heritage permit, and it's simply just subject to the building code and the normal building permit process. But other strategies to talk with the Accessibility Advisory Committee are possible, and we can discuss those.
Okay, and we could get to that further down the road. Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Councillor Sless, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to understand process a little better, if I could. If, I'll use the example of the Lorne Crescent. I don't know how many houses are there. Say there's 25 houses and 10 of them want in and 15 want out. How does that work?
So through the chair to the councillor, with this step, what we would do is take that feedback and report it back in the fourth quarter of the year. We're looking to align with the budgeting process or the updates in the next year's budgeting process. And you'd have that information before making a decision. So in prior cases where there was not support for the district, but there were individual homeowners, we had offered individual designation to the interested parties, not designating a district.
But I guess to get to the crux of it, if a minority, do you have to have a majority to designate the area a heritage district? Or what's the determining factor that you say, okay, that's going to be one of those?
So to you, councillor, there's criteria in the act and then it's council's decision. So you would have that feedback before ever approving a budget for any research or any district. This is purely consultation. So you would know upfront, this neighborhood is not interested. That will be what's reported back to this council.
Okay, but I guess I'm trying to get how you make that determination. If I'll use the 25 homes, 15 want to be in, and the other 10 are saying no, would that get a recommendation to say this should be a district?
Through the chair, if there was a majority of homeowners responding saying that, then yes, we would present that to council, recommending the district proceed, and it would be.
And then does that trap the 10 that were opposed into the same criteria, the same complexity of doing something to their house as the other 15, even though they said no?
Through the chair, it would if that district was created.
Okay, I needed that clarity. Thank you. This is just to gather that information. This isn't approving anything.
Correct. Purely a public consultation exercise.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Sless. Councillor Sokoli.
Yes, thank you. I am of the opinion that it's absolutely none of our business what anybody wants to do with their home. And I know I'm not going to support it when the consultation comes back. So I'm just going to vote against it today and here because I don't think we should be designating anything for anyone. Can you just clarify for me, if we designate an entire district, can the homeowner opt out? Can one person say, I want out?
To the chair, that's a tricky answer. There's no clear path. There's some amendments. We don't know when they're coming from the province, but that wasn't the case before. You'd appeal to the tribunal, a decision would be made.
Okay. So definitely based on that, I am going to, if they don't even have a vehicle to opt out of this program, and I'd bet my bottom dollar on the fact that we're not going to have an entire district of people who agree to all be part of this program. I'm just going to cut to the chase and save some staff time, and I'm voting against this today. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Sokoli. Any other speakers? Seeing none, I just want to, Mayor Davis mentioned about Brant Ave was designated. I actually remember that I wasn't on council, but I was an avid watcher But you'll notice on Brand Ave, there's a strip plaza in the corner of Brand Ave and Church Street. And I think that was the impetus or the crux that tipped the handle on that being a heritage district. When people saw a nice old house come down and something that didn't meet the character of the neighborhood go up. And there was a fear that that would be all of Brand Ave. I remember the debate back then. So I'm going to call the question on the vote.
Thank you. Item 8.1.7 carried on a vote of 9-2. All those voting in favor are Councilors Samwell, Van Tilburg, Carpenter, Hunt, McCreary, Caputo, Sless, Sullivan, Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Councilors Secoli and Martin.
Thank you. That moves us to 8.2.1, Human Resources Quarterly Report. Mayor Davis, you asked for the separation. You have the floor, sir.
Oh, okay. So on this one, I have, thank you, Anita, through you, Mr. Chair, to Anita. First of all, before I ask questions, this is something that comes out of the Strong Mayor Powers. We did, I did. One of the few things I did was disband the HR committee and replaced it with this, thinking that this would give us more relevant information to the health of the organization and helping the organization improve. Actually, I learned this technique with Grandbridge Energy. Grandbridge Energy, a very large professionally run corporation delivering hydro in Cambridge, Brantford, and North Dumfries, uses this to keep the board informed of what's happening inside the organization and to help everyone, staff included, determine what areas of focus there should be to improve the organization. Because that's the purpose of this. It's not to be critical and find fault. What it is, it's intended to allow on a quarterly basis to kind of take the temperature of the organization and from a people perspective, and what it is that needs to be worked on to improve the organization, both the culture and the productivity, and just improving the workplace and the work atmosphere. And so a question for you, Anita. Thank you very much for putting this together. It's very interesting to see our very first HR metrics report. And I know with Grandbridge Energy, there are a couple of other metrics they use, such as there's a section that talks about turnover and how much turnover there is in comparison to other years and what might be driving that. There's a section that talks about exit interviews and what are and there's 4 categories, like a new and better opportunity, health, retirement, that sort of thing. So you have an understanding, because you do exit interviews, what people are saying who are leaving the organization. And there's also a little more detailed information on absenteeism and things like injuries and workplace injuries. So this is a great start. As I understand it, this is a start. It's not going to be the final list of metrics we'll use. There's the question.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Davis. Through Chair Carpenter to Mayor Davis. Thank you for your comments. We are very pleased to be able to provide this report to Council. As you indicated, it is our first effort to provide some metrics to City Council for consideration. There will be improvements and the metrics will evolve over time. We do exit interviews with our staff, not that are leaving the organization. Not everyone takes the opportunity to provide us with that feedback in terms of why they are leaving, but we do have some information. And so we would be pleased to provide that information when we do our next report 3 months hence.
Right. And so how will staff use these metrics? How do you foresee staff using these metrics to improve the organization?
Through Chair Carpenter to Mayor Davis. I foresee the staff using these metrics to be able to track how we are improving over time, how we are addressing some of the concerns that exist corporately with our people, and working on a number of issues. Our next report will actually be our People Master Plan Tracking Update Report, and that will give us information specifically to the People Master Plan. And then we will follow it up with this update on the next quarter of metrics for the People organization.
Yeah, and I might just say one last thing, Councillor Carpenter. So we have to be careful as the Board of Governors, how we use this information. I mean, you can use this information to pound on staff and say you've done something wrong and use it as kind of a tool of scapegoating. That would be a bad move. This is, I've seen it how it works in Grandbridge, and it really becomes a focus on, okay, this is an area that, we might be slipping on, or we obviously have some issues. So what are we going to do to make it better and improve? That's how you use these tools. And that's a constructive way to use a tool. So I'll ask you one more question, Anita. In this report, there's, I guess, two things are a little bit of a concern. And we don't have much of a timeline to look at, but I think there was workplace injuries or workplace incidents was a little bit higher. And also resignations were a bit higher. So what do you make of that information, and what should we do in terms of addressing that? And I'll just say one last thing. People talk about transparency. This is this organization being transparent. Thank you.
I'll let you answer the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Carpenter, to Mayor Davis. Appreciate those comments. I will speak to the resignations information first, and then I will call on Nadine Dunlop, our City Manager of Health, Wellness, and Safety, to speak to the health and safety incidents. So with respect to the resignations, our sense is that the majority of the increase associated with that is related to rate of pay and or better job opportunity. People have been leaving the organization to become supervisors or managers, and with an organization that is in a, we have a triangle and there's only so many positions at the top. And so all municipalities, all organizations are looking for positions with or individuals with skills. And so some individuals are leaving for that better job opportunity and some are leaving for that rate of pay. That's our sense, but we will certainly dig deeper into the data and be able to provide that information at the next report.
Thank you.
And then Nadine, if you wouldn't mind speaking to the question around the health and safety incidents, please.
Yes, absolutely. Through the chair to Mayor Davis. As far as the incident reports, we did see an increase in 2023. I would attribute that increase of incidents to two things. First, being that we did an education campaign internally at the city in 2023 as part of our participation in the WSIB Excellence Program, which brought training and education and awareness to managers and supervisors on the importance of reporting incidents. So I think that that's one of the reasons why we did see an increase in those incidents. That campaign started in the beginning of 2023. The second, I would say we did see an increase in harassment incidents that were reported by staff. These are often challenging incidents and events because it is how the employees themselves perceive the event. So we would never obviously discourage staff from reporting those types of incidents. Those would be the two contributing factors that I would say showed an increase in reporting.
Thank you very much. Councilor Martin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Anita. The report says there was 18 retirements, 47 resignations in 2023, but it also says there was 208 full-time recruitments. So, I mean, 65 of those were to replace retired or resigned individuals. I don't remember approving over 140 new staff for 2023. What were the other recruitments for?
Through Chair Carpenter to Councillor Martin, what happens when somebody retires or leaves, often at the more senior level, that results in a backfill situation. And so when a director leaves, we backfill with a manager. When a manager leaves, we backfill with a supervisor. And so each of those are unique recruitments. And so one retirement or resignation could lead to 4 or 5 or 6 different recruitment files that need to be open.
So that's what that happens when you promote within.
Yes.
So there was about 140 internal promotions.
We would have to do those numbers and do that calculation. We can certainly report on that in greater detail and in the next report.
Yeah, I think that'd be good in the next report, because I see that as good news. It shows that we're promoting our people and advancing our people within the organization, and that builds morale within the organization, because people know they have a chance to move up. Where if you constantly bring in people from outside, it puts a damper on morale. So thank you. That's good news.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Do you want to speak?
Yes, if I can, through, somewhat to Councillor Martin's question. It's like, council to know it's from a former policy and we still follow it. Every Tuesday at our senior leadership team meetings, every new position or every vacant position at the corporation is reviewed by the senior leadership team to see if there's redundancy or any sort of efficiencies while that position is empty, and it's reviewed every single week, and they're approved by the senior leadership team on every Tuesday morning. So we do that, and to Nita's point, a lot of them are the backfills from positions that we've had empty.
Thank you, Ms. Richards. Councillor Hunt, you have the floor.
Thank you, and through you to Anita. So first of all, having chaired the HR committee for the past year, I found this report to be so much more informative than anything else that's come before us. And so for that, I thank you and your team. I think this is a much improved way of reporting to council as a whole. So thank you for that. I want to also follow up with the number of full-time resignations. So I'm glad to hear that we do in fact conduct exit interviews, because that was one of my questions. And so I believe if I understand correctly, that information can be included in further reports to give us a bit of a sense of maybe where we need to address as a corporation the reason that we're having full-time employees resign.
Through Chair Carpenter to Councillor Hunt. Yes, we will certainly be reviewing our exit interview data and including that in future reports. Another source of information is our staffing requisitions. There is a place in that staffing requisition form for hiring managers to indicate why the position has been vacant. And that is another place for information. And we are running our reports on that data source as well.
Great, that's good to know. My just one last question. Diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, I like to throw in there because I don't think you can do three without the fourth. Those are initiatives that are covered under the People Master Plan. So is the intention that we would be receiving reports on those initiatives as part of this report or as part of the People Master Plan reporting?
Through Chair Carpenter to Councillor Hunt, those particular initiatives will be reported on through the People Master Plan. They won't be part of this metrics report yet. And I say yet because we need to really develop a diversity, equity, and inclusion plan, and we need to have a strategy and work corporately to try and get some more metrics around that. We're just not at that place yet corporately.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Anita. And again, good work.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Councillor McCurry, you have the floor, sir.
Chair, thank you. And through you to staff. The HR committee previously reviewed staff recommendations regarding reorganizations and the onboarding of new positions. Can you remind me how that function changes with the demise of the HR committee?
There's two, as previously mentioned, the senior leadership team reviews all new positions. We do have an internal committee called the EODT, and I can't remember in this late hour what that stands for. Employee Organization Development Team, actually. Thank you. My memory came to me. And we review every, as a senior leadership team, the commissioners and myself and Anita and a person from finance reviews and legal also reviews every reorganization change. And they come out to be net zero. We've only had one since the HR committee disbanded, but it's a very small one, extremely small. But actually the team meets tomorrow, and we do look internally to make sure it doesn't affect any budgets or any operations.
So council has been relieved of that onerous obligation?
It's a management function, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McCurry. Seeing no further speakers, I call the question.
My apologies. It seems like eScribe has gone down at the perfect time. So if we can do a show of hands, please. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. And that item carried unanimously.
Thank you. And there's been a request for just a 5-minute break. I know we only got 2 items on the agenda, but it's necessary. So we're going to break for 5 minutes. To order, we have 2 resolutions on the agenda, 9.1 and then 9.2, which the mayor will take over as I've declared a conflict of interest on that. So 9.1, I understand, Councilor McCreary, you want to move resolution that will waive the rules that this comes before us this evening. So that would be the first order of business item.
10-4.
Okay. You move that, and who's your seconder?
My seconder is Councilor Martin.
Did I see a nod? Okay, I do. Okay. Okay, that requires 2/3 vote, and eScribe is back up. So we're gonna call the question, the vote to waive the rules, have this come before us this evening. I got the vote. Everybody get the vote? Okay, we're gonna do it by raise of hand. Please raise your hands. It carries a majority vote. Councilor McCreary, it's on the floor. You have the first speaking opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll reiterate that it is moved and seconded by the same 2 esteemed Ward 3 councilors, that being myself and Councilor Martin. And I'll read you the resolution now, Mr. Chair. Reads as follows: whereas gardens and gardening contribute to the quality of life of our municipality and create safe and healthy places where people can come together. And whereas the city of Brantford is proud to have a rich tradition of horticultural excellence with more than 180 floral gardens plus many other floral works of art. And whereas the citizens of Brantford are proud of their city's horticultural beauty and environmental stewardship. And whereas a beautiful environment contributes to the overall quality of life of Brantford residents. And whereas Communities in Bloom is a nonprofit organization committed to fostering civic pride, environmental responsibility, and community beautification across Canada through friendly challenge and competition. And whereas the city of Brantford has participated in the past and has been invited to participate in the Communities in Bloom Ontario Challenge in 2024. And whereas the cost for entry, which covers the cost of admin and project evaluation for a city of Brantford size, is $1,000. And whereas Communities in Bloom recommends approval of other costs associated with promotion involving the community, honoring participants and volunteers, and attending any awards ceremony that staff have estimated at $2,000. And whereas the city of Brantford wishes to demonstrate our accomplishments as one of the best blooming communities in Canada and celebrate internationally recognized horticultural excellence. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the city of Brantford enters into the 2024 Communities in Bloom Ontario program, and that the costs associated for registering, participating, promoting, and other ancillary costs for the provincial competition be funded in the amount of $3,000 from the Council Priorities Reserve. And I will speak to this, Mr. Chairman. We have done this before. It proved to be a great thing for our community. Many groups got involved beyond the involvement of our city's professional parks and recreation staff. There's an opportunity for some of the groups which have come into being of late to participate in this as well. It's a competition, but it's a friendly competition. And I have no doubt that if council supports this tonight, we will go on to victory in 2024.
Thank you, Councilor McCurry. And Councilor Celeste, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I'll wholeheartedly support this. I remember back in the 90s, we did this, and it was it's a community builder. It not just makes the city look better, but it instills pride, and it's an uplift to the community. And I think we actually won the national championship or something that year. So it's a huge thing. I think it probably will go beyond the $3,000 mark, because we're going to have to enhance some maybe horticultural budgets and that type of thing. but I think that's money very well spent. We've done a good job at hacking away at those budgets over the last little while. And it just opens up the vandalism and the shoddiness looking of a community. And I think we should get back to where we were and as a bright shining star. And I think the city on the hill. So I would wholeheartedly support this, and I would encourage all members of the community. It's not just the city doing this. Spruce up the front of your house, put a flower garden in, do something or plant a spruce. But whatever you do, enhance your property and make it look nice, and the whole city just gets an uplift out of this. So I think it's just a great program, and I'm excited to see it come forward. I was excited when I saw the invitation come through via email. And I'm glad that Councilor McCreary picked it up and brought it forward, because it's a great program. Pleased to support it.
Thank you, Councilor Sless. Councilor Caputo. have
Thank
the
you,
floor.
Mr. Chair. Great job, Councilor McCreary. I also fully support this. I think our vision from a city perspective needs to move forward where we have gardens everywhere, entrances into the city, off the 403, coming in off 403 into the city. Everything that's going to really highlight the fact that our community is beautiful. And as you mentioned here, it brings people together and it makes people feel good. So I applaud it. And I wish that every citizen in the city also takes part in this. And maybe you don't need to plant a spruce, maybe you just need to plant a little maple.
Thank you, Councilor Caputo. Councilor Samuel.
So I will be pleased to support this tonight as well. I've talked to so many citizens that still hold it in their heart from when Brantford was a blooming city. And so I'm looking forward to us doing this as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Samuel. Any further speakers? I would just, I'd like to add to this, if you don't mind. We, in past years, we took out a lot of our own plantings in cul-de-sacs and parks and on intersections as a budget saving measure. I would hope that when we're thinking about this, we would think about putting some of those things back. Brantford was known for some of the best parks. Everyone knew Brantford for having the best parks and displays in Ontario. We were known for that. It was part of the record of who we were. And so the Community in Bloom was a natural fit when it was brought forward at that time, because our parks were so nice that people added them to their homes. So if council wants to move down this direction, we might want to think about what we've taken away. Maybe it's time to put some of that back now and beautify the community ourselves. I did, when Councilor McCreary first brought the resolution forward, I did notice around the city, some of the industrial places that took part of this, part in this last time, have fallen by the wayside, and there's a lot of properties that could use the improvement. And it's all part of the mayor's talking proud Brantford that the Bulldogs have done for us, right? This is what we're talking about, and that's what Councilor McCreary is talking about. We should be proud of our city and proud of where we've been. Certainly where we've been, the history of where we've been is remarkable, and where we can be is also an opportunity. And Councilor Caputo raises that on quite often about celebration ourselves and the carnivals and fairs and so forth. So I'll be happy to support that. And I'm sorry, I don't normally as a chair speak. Thank you. Call the question.
Thank you. The item carried unanimously on a recorded vote of 11-0. All those voting in favor are Councilors Van Tilburg, Samuel, Hunt, Carpenter, McCurry, Martin, Sless, Caputo, Sullivan, Secoli, and Mayor Davis.
Okay, the next item will be handed over to Mayor Davis to handle because I declared a conflict. But before I go, I'd like to say thank all members of council for a very healthy discussion and very, very, very complimentary and very polite discussion. I really appreciate it. The chair really appreciates making my job easier that way. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I can do it from here. Thank you, Councilor Carpenter, and thank you for sharing the committee of the whole tonight. So we have one resolution left. We don't have any notices of motion, so just one item left. And it is the Reliable and Accessible Public Rail Transit, CN Rail. Resolution to be brought forward by Councilor Van Tilburg. And I think Councilor Van Tilburg, you first want us to deal with the urgent motion similar to what we just dealt with in the previous resolution?
Yes, I'd like to move forward with handling this issue tonight. There is no financial element to it that would need to go to estimates committee.
We get a seconder for that, Councillor Samwell is seconding it. All right, you can take the vote on that.
Thank you. The motion to waive the rules carried on a recorded vote of 10-0. All those voting in favor are Councillor Samuel, Van Tilburg, Hunt, McCreary, Martin, Caputo, Sless, Sullivan, Secoli, and Mayor Davis, noting Councillor Carpenter's conflict.
All right, so Councillor Van Tilburg, I originally was going to be the seconder for this, but now that I'm in the chair, I can't do that. So I assume you want to move your resolution. You're looking for a seconder.
Yes, I'd like to move this resolution seeking a seconder.
Councillor Samwell's indicating her intent to be the seconder.
Thank you, Councillor Samwell. Reliable and accessible public transit. Whereas Canadians deserve accessible, reliable, and efficient rail service. And whereas in 2021, the Canadian Minister of Transportation announced that the federal government would be pursuing opportunities to enhance passenger rail service in southwestern Ontario. And whereas passengers continue to experience long delays and disruption in service related to interruptions caused by CN Rail's freight systems and refusal to give priority to passenger rail service. And whereas Metrolinx and Via in extending or improving commuter train service from Aldershot through to Brantford, Woodstock, Ingersoll, and London is reliant on access to CN rail lines. And whereas CN views increased passenger rail service on its lines as being incompatible with its primary business of moving freight and is unlikely to cooperate in extending commuter rail service on its lines in southwestern Ontario without direction from the federal government. And whereas CN Rail has shown a disregard for municipal property maintenance standards in respect to the maintenance of their rail lines, block municipalities' attempts to enforce municipal property standards on their rail lines. And whereas CN Rail consistent failure to provide a timely response to development applications adjacent to rail right-of-ways imposes inordinate delays and expense for builders and municipalities, further jeopardizing the ability of municipalities to address the housing crisis. And whereas there is complete lack of federal regulations providing Via and Metrolinx with any degree of priority or guaranteed access to rail rights or of way or directing CN Rail to work cooperatively with municipalities. And whereas the city of Brantford calls upon the federal government to assist other levels of government as they take steps to the need to address the need for reliable and accessible public rail transit, timely processing of housing developments, and prompt and equitable enforcement of municipal property standards. Now, therefore, the Council of the City of Brantford requests that the federal government enacting necessary legislative and regulatory provisions providing Via and Metrolinx with priority right-of-way over freight rail lines, and further to direct CN Rail to work positively and cooperatively with municipalities and provincial governments in processing of land development applications and the prompt and timely enforcement of municipal property standards, and that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to all Ontario municipalities and to the Member of Provincial Parliament, Will Buma, Member of Parliament, Larry Brock, Federal Minister of Transport, Pablo Rodriguez, Provincial Minister of Transportation, Prabmeet Singh Sarkaria, President and CEO of Metrolinx, President and Chief Executive Officer of Via Rail Canada Inc., and the President and Chief Executive Officer of CN. Boy, that's a mouthful. And what that's really about is, as a city, we see as people move in here, they expect reliable rail service to get them around. Fewer and fewer people each year have cars. They get them later and later in life, and more become dependent on a rail service. And we used to have a very good, strong passenger rail service in Brantford, and it is withered away. And what's happened is CN Rail has its priorities on freight, and they do not have to give way to passenger rail service, which kind of passenger rails we know go very quickly. Freight trains do not. When a freight train is taking off and a passenger train has to wait, that wait is quite significant. So it causes a lot of delays. we know that we have to expand that passenger rail service. In fact, when I'm looking at some of the developments happening in the downtown core, particularly right on Market Street near the railway tracks, if somebody's interested in buying a property there and their work is in Toronto, they think, hey, I'll take the train. It's right there. I mean, it's such an easy one to think. And you can be living in Toronto and saying, hey, I'd like to move to Brantford, or you could be living in Brantford saying, I work in Toronto. The thing is that reliability is not there yet. And that's why we've been fighting for it. And to increase it, we've got to get the priority to passenger rail service. So that's one of the things it does. The other thing that's happening is that CN Rail often has they have an obligation to answer in development proposals what their concerns are, but apparently they're not restricted by the same timelines that we are, and it puts the developments in jeopardy. Sometimes having to delay them significantly or take them to a tribunal process. So that in itself is problematic. And I think the third thing on there that we have to address is that often I get complaints, and I think every councillor gets complaints regarding some of the, when they see the rubble falling from underneath the bridges, the concrete cracking or graffiti or things like that, or random debris near and along the railway lines. Our property standards can't actually make them do anything. We can ask them, and they may do it when they get around to it if they want to do it at all. So this is to address all those issues that can make our city better, more accessible, and the transit make more sense and be more efficient. So I'll just leave it with that.
Thank you, Councillor Van Tilburg. Next in line, Councillor Caputo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Great work, Councillor Van Tilburg. Glad this has been brought up. Certainly an opportunity for us to be noticed in terms of our growing city and the opportunities that are lying there ahead of us. Just wanted to comment on, you're talking about the delays in construction, because we're still delayed on the Aber Bridge. And all of that came through basically because we had timelines from CN that took so long that we had to delay that process moving into the spring of this year. And I just want people to know that this isn't a city thing, that this was definitely all of it through CN. So thank you for putting this forward. And I hope that everyone also understands from a citizen standpoint that we are looking out for the interest of every citizen of Brantford. Thanks.
Any other speakers? I'm going to speak. Got to warm up here. It's hard for me to be diplomatic here because I have to be restrained when I talk about CN Rail, and I've got to be respectful, but I got to tell you, it's hard. And the reason why a lot of people think, you know, CN Rail, it's this lovely Crown Corporation. It hasn't been a Crown Corporation since Brian Mulroney's government, where they privatized it. And since then, it has become probably the largest railroad in North America, lines extending right down into Mexico. It's no longer publicly owned. It's no longer a Crown Corporation. It's owned, well, the largest shareholder is Bill Gates. And it's become a railroad corporation, and it has become highly profitable to its credit, helping the benefit of its shareholders. But it's lost sight, I think, of some of its other obligations that corporations have, and that's to act as proper corporate citizens of the country and province and municipalities that you operate in, and carry on like most other corporations. And what am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about giving priority to freight rail service over freight. It's done in the States. The States has regulations that give Amtrak priority over freight to a limited degree. It happens in Mexico as well. Canada is the only country in North America that doesn't do that. And as a result, passenger rail service suffers. And you might be interested in knowing, so how's CN's record in dealing with Amtrak? Well, I got this right out of Wikipedia. In 2018, Amtrak began issuing public report cards, grading the impact of freight railroads on passenger train performance. CN received the lowest possible grade of F on the first card issued in March 2018. We just recently heard from the president of Via Rail asking that the federal government impose some kind of regulatory requirement similar to what's in Mexico and what's in the US, giving Via some priority over freight traffic to establish passenger rail lines. You know, and there's some people that say, well, why should you do that? The CN Rail owns these rail lines. Well, you got to think about how those rail lines were formed. They were formed mainly in the 1800s, and they give the rail company a monopoly over a corridor. And they gained that monopoly through usually with the assistance of governments and expropriation, helping them build the rail lines for good reasons. And the original deal with railroads was you give us freight and you give us passenger service. Because until the 1940s, that was passenger rail was how people got around, not interstate highways. And then when that became unprofitable for railway corporations, then the governments in both the US and Canada relieved these private corporations of responsibility by setting up things like Amtrak and VIA. And, you know, I think it's legitimate as recognized in the United States, a bastion of free enterprise, that railways, because of the way in which the railway corridors were created, have an obligation to provide, at least help Amtrak and VIA provide rail service. I'll come back and talk about that in a minute, but I want to talk about some of the specific problems we're having in Brantford in respect to property standards. It used to be we had an arrangement with CN Rail where if someone complained about mattresses and stuff in the railway right away, we could go on and we'd remove it, our operational staff, and then we'd send a bill to VIA and CN Rail, and they would pay for it. And that changed a couple of years ago. Now CN Rail has told our staff, you go on to those rail lines, you're going to be charged with trespass under the Railway Act, $5,000 fine. So our staff can no longer respond to property standard complaints that come into our city hall, and we have to send the request on to CN Rail, and they usually will clean it up, but you know, many days and weeks later. The Ava Road Bridge project has been delayed for at least a year now because of CN Rail and imposing what I think are unreasonable requirements that aren't required by federal regulation. We have a situation where developments, we saw the old Alexander property near the train station, been delayed because CN Rail did not respond within the period of time required for responding. And the applicant filed an application with the OLT, didn't even come to us. And now the development has changed completely because of that delay. And the neighborhood's seeing something that they didn't see before because of the delay of CN Rail. And, you know, why is this happening? Because my theory would be that CN Rail, as I guess as it should be, focusing its shareholders, is so focused on freight, which is critical to our country, that they're losing sight that it has other obligations. And so that's what this resolution is all about. The last thing I'll say, it has to do with GO train service and VIA service. And between here and Aldershot, there are two rail lines, both owned by CN Rail. Between Aldershot and Union Station, there is a GO line. Like Metrolinx has its own rail line, so it doesn't have to deal with CN Rail for that Lakeshore West GO line. To bring a rail line out here, a third rail line, means dynamiting the Niagara Escarpment to create a third rail line. You know, how do you think that's going to go? It'll take years and cost tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. And so to do passenger service between here and Aldershot, whether it's VIA, whether it's GO, requires CN Rail to relinquish some of its freight priority. And so that's what this is about, is since they do not appear to be willing to do that voluntarily, it would seem that important to assist us in helping to establish better commuter rail service, whether it's GO or whether it's VIA, between here and London and Woodstock and Ingersoll, that we need the federal government to do what they've done in the States, make some regulations that require CP and CN Rail to be more responsive to the needs of the passenger rail service, and also to do what the Ford government just recently did with school boards. I'm taking 2 4-minute speaking opportunities to go a total of 8, so I'm taking a liberty here since I'm chairing. To do what the Ford government did with school boards, and that they passed a regulation in the spring requiring school boards to work cooperatively with municipalities. And I think the federal government should take a cue from the Ford government and do the same thing for railway lines, for rail companies. So that's all I'm going to say. I hope you'll all support this unanimously. I think it's important for a number of different reasons that we do this. I'm done, and I took two speaking, I'm
You
not gonna
saved the
speak again.
minute.
I took two speaking opportunities for a total of 4 for a total of 8. Anybody else want to speak?
No.
Okay, good. Covered it all. Okay, we'll call the vote. Councillor Van Tilburg, did you want to wrap up?
I think the will of council will be heard.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. Item 9.2 carried unanimously on a recorded vote. All those in favor are as follows. Counselor Samuel, Van Tilburg, Hunt, Martin, McCreary, Celeste, Caputo, Secoli, Sullivan, and Mayor Davis.
That's it. We have no notice of motion and until, I think we have a meeting, until our estimates committee meeting tomorrow night.